Ling Han and Feng Miaoling ran madly, shaking off their pursuers before finally slowing down. Thanks, Ling Han said to Feng Miaoling. Feng Miaoling smiled beautifully. You are my future husband, so it is only right that I help you. If you don't say such words, there is still a way for us to communicate. Bye. Ling Han turned around and ran. Hey, I'm not an ugly woman. Feng Miaoling chased after him, and as she did so, she removed her veil, revealing a breathtakingly beautiful face. She was definitely no inferior to Song Lan, Qi Menghan, and the others. Ling Han swept an eye over her, and was indeed stunned for a moment. However, he presently was not in the mood for romance, nor did he want to trifle with this crazy woman. If he really took her into his harem, who knows, she may kill the Empress and the others. He definitely couldn't touch this hornet's nest. Flee. Phoenix Wing's divine flight was used, and very soon, he had disappeared without a trace. After throwing Feng Miaoling off his tail, Ling Han began to study the black heavenly Tao lotus. There is actually celestial qi in this. Ling Han was stunned. No wonder Guan Xinghan and the others had pursued him so intently. There were countless energies in the heaven and earth, such as the power of fire, the power of water, and the power of lightning. They could all be absorbed and refined into mystical power. Thus, they could all be called ordinary energy or low-level energy. And in the case of high-level energy, it could not be refined and could only be used in battle, aside from a freak like the True Dragon, who had actually created a cultivation technique, which would allow a cultivator to use high-level energy to temper their physique. However, there was also some extremely rare energy. It was of an extremely high level, yet could be absorbed and refined. Every time a sliver of it was refined, it would be of great help to the improvement of one's cultivation level. This was called celestial qi. Cultivating progressed one step at a time, but if one could endlessly absorb celestial qi, he could completely realize a leap in cultivation level. And in the case of the minor advanced tiers who had formed the fruits of cultivation, they could only use the celestial qi as irrigation to stimulate the growth of the fruits. They had an incredibly strong yearning for the celestial qi. To describe in further detail, there was actually a difference among celestial qi. There was also a notion of quality. Even for imperial clans which had an astonishing background, and also had a considerable number of celestial qi in terms of high-quality celestial qi ho-ho, that was in extremely limited supply. When celestial qi of different quality was nurtured, the quality of the fruits of cultivation that grew would also be different. Thus, so many golden generations had all advanced into sect master tier, but why had only 3 of them broken through to venerate tier? It wasn't that others couldn't, but rather that their fruits of cultivation hadn't reached perfection yet, and they were unwilling to break through. And in the case of this black heavenly Tao lotus, the celestial qi contained within was of extremely high quality, and would be of great help in improving the quality of the fruits of cultivation. No wonder Guan Xinghan and the others seemed to have gone crazy after seeing Ling Han take away the black heavenly Tao lotus. Should I eat it or not? Ling Han hesitated slightly. The black heavenly Tao lotus wasn't meant for spirit transformation tier. If he ate it now, the celestial qi within it could only be used to increase his cultivation level, and wouldn't have the effect of improving the fruits of cultivation. It was equivalent to a massive waste. The most pressing matter for me now is to increase my cultivation level. Otherwise, I can only run when I see those golden generations. So what if it's a waste? As long as my cultivation level increases, would I still need to worry about not being able to obtain celestial qi? Ling Han was very decisive, and immediately began to eat the black heavenly Tao lotus. However, this thing was not delicious at all. It was like chewing on grass, causing Ling Han to frown deeply. There should be no one else that would experience such pain when ingesting a high-level celestial medicine as I am now. At this moment, I am really envious of the ox tribe and horse tribe. They are herbivorous in the first place, and there is nothing unusual for them to eat this. After ingesting the celestial medicine, the effects were immediately produced. Bursts of energy surged, incredibly dense. In his mind, the self was like a bottomless pit, madly absorbing this energy, not leaving a single bit behind. His appetite was astonishingly huge. However, this celestial medicine was originally prepared for the minor advanced tier. No matter how freakish he was only in the spirit transformation tier and was close to reaching its peak. Thus, after half a day, he felt that he had reached the consummate level and was no longer absorbing the medicinal effects. All right, he had finally reached the consummate level of the spirit transformation tier. Next, he only had to stabilize his cultivation level, and he would be able to break through to the minor advanced tier. He was just about to breathe a sigh of relief. He could finally break through to a higher cultivation level. However, he suddenly discovered that the millions and millions of dimensions in his body were trembling slightly at the same time. They began to absorb the medicinal effects, turning them into pure energy, causing the spiritual chi in each dimension to increase greatly. What was going on here? What are you all joining in on the excitement for? A long time ago, Ling Han had fed back to the dimensions in his body, raising all the dimensions to the transcendent level, but now it seemed like these dimensions were going to evolve again and advance to a new height. Ling Han was a little worried. His consciousness entered into the dimensions and stood together with Shui Yenyu and the others, carefully sensing for any changes. The spiritual chi increased dramatically. Though the medicinal effects were shared among millions and millions of dimensions, and for every dimension what they obtained was only a sliver, the dimensions themselves were also of a very low level. A sliver was enough to bring about a massive change. With the explosive increase in spiritual chi, plants grew madly, and all things showed signs of developing a spirit, and the path of cultivation for intelligent creatures became even easier. What did this signify? Ling Han could obtain even more power of dimensions than this. That was because the power of dimensions was the power of living beings, and only intelligent living beings could respond to Ling Han's consciousness and provide him with spiritual power. Now, the number of intelligent living beings was beginning to increase, and each of them had also become stronger. The power of dimension that he had obtained naturally improved as well. Celestial chi actually brought about such a change? Ling Han was astounded. This was naturally a good thing for him because a great many extreme breakthroughs were related to the power of dimension in his body. He channeled the Imperial Scroll, speeding up the circulation of the medicinal effects. Though the Imperial Scroll was ineffective at the level of 10th change, it was a piece of cake to speed up the circulation of the medicinal effects. 2 days later, the effects brought about by the black heavenly Tao lotus were finally exhausted. Ling Han's true self was already at the consummate level, reaching the peak stage of the spirit transformation tier. However, he had a feeling that he probably hadn't reached the consummate level of the spirit transformation tier yet. The key lay in the dimensions inside his body. He could now attempt to break through to the minor advanced tier, but the fruits of cultivation that he bore would definitely be affected, and he would not be able to reach his strongest. What he pursued was the path of the strongest, so how could he be willing to accept an imperfection? That's good too. Ling Han nodded and said, I'll stabilize my cultivation level and prepare to break through to the minor advanced tier. Meanwhile, I'll also continue to search for celestial chi, allowing the dimensions in my body to evolve again and reach perfection. However, this was very difficult. Ling Han sighed. Celestial chi could only be captured by elites at the minor advanced tier. If one's cultivation level wasn't high enough, they wouldn't be able to sense it at all. They could only obtain it from celestial medicines or natural treasures. It was something that could only be encountered by chance. Thankfully, this was Imperial Path. The Imperial Path is actually not to help you become emperor, but to help you build a good foundation as much as possible, so that you would have the qualifications to break through to become a great emperor. Ling Han nodded. Why was it that the great emperor was basically in the top 10, or even the top 3 in fact, among those that had walked out of the Imperial Path? That was because there was great fortune for those who were in the lead. Ling Han stood up and continued on his way. The giant had already shifted its position, so there was already a stretch of flat land ahead of him. At this time, the others had already left, and there were a great many people that had stayed behind in the North Prosperity City. They would not advance any further, and would stay here until the Imperial Path closed, and leave safely. The previous adventures had already frightened these people, and they did not dare to take any more risks. Ling Han passed by this massive pit, and after walking for a few more days, He saw a vast ocean stretching out in front of him. Why was it an ocean again? The previous trip to the 7 islands was still vivid in his mind. In the blink of an eye, he was going to do it again? Ling Han tried to fly over, but with a plop, he fell into the sea. Sure enough, there was a terrifying pressure in the air, making it impossible for him to maintain flight. However, there was no terrifying killing intent in the sea, so he could completely swim freely. Since that was the case, Ling Han didn't expend any more effort to find a way to travel through the air. Instead, he dove into the depths of the sea. Perhaps there would be some celestial medicines in the sea. At present, he was filled with longing for celestial qi, and he could not directly capture it from the heaven and earth, so he could only set his sights on the celestial medicine. He hoped that he would be extremely lucky. The sea was filled with vitality. This wasn't a dead sea, but one that was filled with seaweed, fish, shrimp, and all kinds of other life forms. However, these life forms were all in their most primitive states. They hadn't stepped on the path of cultivation and developed intelligence. Ling Han continued to swim. Even in the great ocean, he could still channel the phoenix wing's divine flight. With a flap of his fiery wings, he could instantly evaporate a large area of seawater around him, so his speed would not be greatly affected. Of course, if it weren't necessary, he wouldn't have channeled the phoenix wing's divine flight either. After all, this would expend a lot of mystical power. As he advanced, the variety of living creatures became more and more varied, and also became larger and larger. Ling Han saw giant fish that were several hundred meters long, as well as sea turtles that looked like small islands. As he advanced, the variety of living creatures became more and more varied, and also became larger and larger. Ling Han saw giant fish that were several hundred meters long, as well as sea turtles that looked like small islands. These living beings still hadn't developed intelligence, but their bodies were nurtured by the power of heaven and earth, so they had boundless strength. They were already qualified to be called vicious beasts. Some giant fish were extremely fierce, and after discovering Ling Han, they immediately launched an attack. In the end, they were naturally easily killed by Ling Han. If he found that it was delicious, he would put it away, and if it wasn't delicious, he would directly discard it. Unfortunately, he did not discover a celestial medicine. This was the celestial medicine after all. How could it be so easily discovered? Furthermore, there should be quite a number of people walking in front of him. Even if there was celestial medicine, it would have already been plucked. Another few days later, a city suddenly appeared ahead of him. This was not an island that had appeared in the sea. There was a city on this island, and it was at the bottom of the sea. This city was extremely large, and it was circular in shape. In the center of the city, there was a tall tower that almost reached the surface of the sea. Then, the height of the buildings on the side gradually decreased, and when they reached the outermost circle, they were only 6 to 9 meters tall. The architectural style of the city was very gaudy. Some were made into the shape of a conch, while others were shell-like. They were all based on marine creatures. In the city, there were very strange creatures swimming here and there. Some were murlocs, but for some that too were murlocs, they had the head of a fish, the body of a fish, and then the lower half of a human. Some were the opposite, having the head of a human and human arms, but the lower half was the body of a fish. Aside from the murlocs, there were also lobstermen, octopus men, and crabmen. Like the murlocs, they had 2 forms. This was the city of the sea race. Ling Han immediately swam over. It was a good thing that there was a change in the scenery. He had been afraid that he would be wandering around aimlessly. That could very possibly be a waste of time. As expected, he wasn't the first to arrive. There were other outsiders in the city, and this was also one of the reasons why Ling Han swam over without hesitation. The members of the sea race didn't pay much attention to him. Perhaps there were too many outsiders here, so he was naturally unremarkable. However, the people and objects here did not exist for no reason. Just take the stone forest from before as an example. It was actually a supergiant, and insects had wormed into its body and wreaked havoc from the colossal pit. When the giant left, a large amount of celestial medicines appeared. Then, what was the purpose of the existence of this city? Ling Han roamed around, trying to understand the situation. After a while, he had a rough understanding of this city. This was the Blue Star Nation, which was ruled by the Blue Star King, and in the far north there was another underworld nation which was constantly at odds with the Blue Star Nation. By this generation, there was hope that this feud could be resolved, because the Blue Star King only had one daughter, and in the case of the underworld nation, the old king only had one son. The two kings had the intention in having the next generation unite in matrimony. In that way, the two nations would become one, and there would naturally be no more disputes. This was a good thing. The prince of the underworld nation had already come here, but the princess of the Blue Star Nation had disappeared. Now, the whole nation was alarmed, and were searching for the whereabouts of this princess. The disappearance of the princess was a huge matter in the first place, and at this point in time, could it be that it was the doing of the stubborn people in the country, who were determined to fight, and did not want to form an alliance through marriage with the underworld nation? Of course, it was also possible that the culprits were supporters of war from the underworld, because if the two nations merged, it was destined that some people would lose their power. In short, the most important thing now was to find the missing princess, so they naturally were not in the mood to care about the problem of outsiders. As long as they didn't cause trouble, no one would care about them. Not long after, he encountered Su Qianhai, one of the Golden Generation elites. The latter did not say another word, and immediately charged over. His terrifying battle prowess was not affected even in the Great Sea. Ling Han didn't linger in battle, and directly fled. But this time he was angered. After shaking off Su Qianhai, he quietly returned. When the strange shadow steps unfolded, he was like a shadow in the sea. Unless one had a cultivation level that far surpassed him, and was close enough, it would be impossible to discover his existence. He walked quietly just like that and found Su Qianhai. Did they think that he could only passively take a beating? He snuck over, then suddenly attacked. As he shot out a punch, the destructive energy blazed. He had pushed his battle prowess to the extreme. Pong! Su Qianhai was a 9-star sect master after all, and furthermore he was a golden generation. Though he had been hit in a rush, he managed to parry in time, and parried this punch from Ling Han. In fact, the rebound from the collision was extremely terrifying, and sent Ling Han flying, throwing up blood madly. However, Su Qianhai immediately discovered that where Ling Han's punch had landed, his flesh and bones were actually melting, as if they had disappeared into thin air. He paled in shock, and decisively severed a large piece of flesh in this area, along with the bones. He could clearly see that the blood, flesh, and bones that had been severed immediately disappeared into thin air. What terrifying destructive power! He looked at Ling Han in the distance as he channeled his secret technique. His blood and flesh instantly began to regenerate, but the growth of his bones slowed considerably. As he approached Ling Han, he said in a baleful voice, "I didn't expect you to be proficient in the strange shadow steps of the Battle God Palace, as expected of the Golden Generation." He had seen through it just like that? Ling Han laughed loudly. "So, you had best keep your eyes open when you sleep. Otherwise, you won't even know when I will chop off your head." Faced with Ling Han's provocation, Su Qianhai was actually rendered speechless. He really couldn't catch up to Ling Han, and Ling Han had also mastered the mysterious movement technique of the Battle God Palace. It was really impossible to guard against him when he was planning to kill. Why was the Battle God Palace so infamous that others hated and feared them at the same time? No one knew where their lair was, and the other reason was naturally the strange shadow steps. Many people had been assassinated, without even knowing what was going on. Who would have thought that your true identity is an assassin from the Battle God Palace? Su Qianhai finally spoke up. Ling Han waved his hand dismissively. Don't flatter the Battle God Palace. They are not qualified to take in a prodigy like me. It was only by chance that I managed to learn a movement technique from the Battle God Palace. Just how lucky are you? In truth, in terms of speed, the greatest technique in the world was definitely the Phoenix Wings Divine Flight, but in terms of concealment, it would definitely be the strange shadow steps. Su Qianhai just looked at Ling Han like that, the killing intent in his eyes cold. It wasn't that he didn't want to kill Ling Han, but that he couldn't. If one wanted to kill Ling Han, It would either have to be a Venerate tier elite making a move, or one had to plan ahead of time so that the latter would not be able to make full use of his advantage in speed. Otherwise, if Phoenix Wing's divine flight was used, what sect master would be able to catch up to him? A powerful sense of urgency rose up in his heart. By the looks of it, he had to advance into the 4th pinnacle level. After becoming a Venerate tier, he only had to stretch out a hand, and heaven and earth could be controlled. Wouldn't it be easy to kill Ling Han then? However, the problem was that his fruits of cultivation hadn't reached perfection yet. If he allowed the fruits of cultivation to transform into the 4th extreme at this moment, it would definitely affect his future potential. At this moment, he was extremely conflicted. Dumb cunt, I'll come kill you next time. There's no need to send me off. Ling Han's figure flashed, and the strange shadow steps activated. He once again fled into the darkness. Though Su Qianhai was so angry that even his hair was standing on end, there was nothing he could do. After Ling Han roamed around the city for 2 days, the royal family suddenly issued a bounty. Anyone who could provide information on the whereabouts of the princess would be rewarded with 5 kilograms of extreme radiance shell. And if they could bring the princess back, they would be rewarded with an additional extreme cold pearl. Ling Han made some analyses. The extreme radiance shell was really a kind of shell. Its taste was incredibly fresh and delicious, and was also greatly nutritious. It would be of great help in improving one's cultivation level and physique. And the extreme cold pearl was even more incredible. That was a natural treasure, nurtured by heaven and earth, and contained celestial chi. When the news spread out, not only were the citizens of the Blue Star Nation excited, even the outsiders were restless. In fact, there were also cultivators from the distant underworld nation that were rapidly rushing over, wanting to join the ranks of searching for the Blue Star Princess. Ling Han's heart thumped in excitement. This was celestial chi. He needed it. Others would only need celestial chi after becoming a sect master, but him? He actually needed it long before that, when he was only in spirit transformation tier. However, this also proved how freakish he was. However, the sea was boundless, so where was he supposed to find this Blue Star Princess? This was in line with the saying, it was like fishing out a needle from the sea. Ling Han first went to the palace, but discovered that the royal family here could not be more approachable. Though there were guards in the palace, they were very polite towards the commoners, and there was no ban on visitors at all, as long as they did not go to the bedroom of the king, queen, and princess. With such lax defenses, whether the Blue Star Princess had been kidnapped, or she had left home on her own, either could happen too easily. Had she run away from home? Of course, this was very likely. That was because this princess may not agree to marry, so wasn't it very understandable for her to throw a tantrum and run away from home? But whether the Blue Star Princess had been kidnapped, or she had run off on her own, where should they go to find her? Several days had already passed, and there were no more clues. How were they supposed to find her? Ling Han exited the city and roamed around aimlessly. However, he didn't find anything. This sea was so big, and it was a 3-dimensional one at that. If a person was really hidden here, how could they possibly find her? He racked his brains. This Blue Star Princess had not disappeared earlier or later, but just so happened to be at such a crucial time when outsiders had come. This was really too coincidental. Thus, Ling Han definitely wouldn't believe that this wasn't deliberately planned. Unknowingly, there was a force behind this. This was Imperial Path, and could be seen as the heaven and earth moving to select a future great emperor. Thus, it was very normal for there to be traces of arrangements. Since that was the case, then the whereabouts of the Blue Star Princess would definitely be traceable. It would not really be like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Could it be that this princess was actually still in the city? Ling Han suddenly had a flash of inspiration. If a princess who enjoyed a comfortable life suddenly had to wander the world, and there was no shortage of fierce beasts in the sea, how many days would this princess be able to live? The conditions for obtaining the bounty were that the princess had to return to the palace alive. Thus, if the Blue Star Princess was still in the city, then where would she be? Firstly, it must be a very remote place. Otherwise, no matter how well it was hidden, there would definitely be clues left behind. Secondly, there must be someone taking care of her. Otherwise, there would still be clues left behind. With these 2 points in mind, Ling Han began to sift through his memory, based on his understanding of this city from the last few days. There are a total of 3 places. The 2 places are poverty-stricken caves, and there are both good and bad people mixed in. Even the power of the nation would find it very difficult to infiltrate these places. They are both controlled by the underground forces. There's also a land of the dead. An earthquake happened in the past, and a terrifying energy surged out. All living things were wiped out there, and it's still considered a land of the dead and uninhabited. Let's go to this danger zone first. Ling Han immediately set off and soon arrived at his destination. Previously, he had come here, but did not venture too deep, because he could still sense a strange energy fluctuation. However, this time was different. He planned to search carefully. At this moment, he felt a little regretful. That was because there was only one self, and there was no spiritual body that he could send out to help him search. There are gains and losses. Although I have lost some convenience, my own battle prowess has become stronger. This is what is most important. Ling Han strolled slowly. In the center of this area, there was shockingly a ravine that was so deep that one could not see the bottom. There was also rolling energy seeping out from within, causing one's heart to palpitate. He faltered slightly. He had actually heard a song. This was a female voice, extremely ethereal. Couldn't be so coincidental that it was that Blue Star Princess that was singing, right? He followed the direction of the song, and very soon he saw a figure's back. She was seated on a massive shell, her long hair fluttering in the waves, revealing her snow-white back. Though she was only showing her back, her willowy waist was slender, her skin was snow-white, and was already very enchanting. However, there was a fishtail growing from the lower half of her body, and it was swaying gently, looking extremely beautiful. Seeing this tail, it should be able to instantly make a great many men lose interest. Ling Han opened his mouth and asked, "Blue Star Princess?" The song came to an abrupt stop. The mermaid seemed to have received a shock, and immediately swam forwards. With a wave of her tail, her speed was extremely fast. Ling Han hurriedly set off in pursuit, and the distance between the two of them rapidly shortened. Shwa! A cold light suddenly shot over from the side, aimed directly at Ling Han's left shoulder. Sneak attack. However, it was only spirit transformation tier level. Now, a spirit transformation tier level attack wanted to pose a threat to Ling Han. He stretched out a hand and pressed down. This cold light immediately stopped. It was actually a sharp spike. Ling Han looked towards the side and saw that there was a sea cucumber standing there. It was clearly a sea cucumber, but he had a human head, and his whole body was covered with sharp spikes. Fuck! Did the spines of sea cucumbers look like this? Ling Han smiled and said, "You are misleading my impression of sea cucumbers. If they look like you, would I still have the appetite to eat sea cucumbers in future?" That sea cucumber person flew into a thunderous rage and immediately arched his body. Show. Several more flashes of cold light shot towards Ling Han. Right at this moment, the woman in front of him suddenly turned around. Ow! Ling Han's impression of the mermaid also crumbled abruptly. This was indeed a female's image, but her face was green, and her skin was layered at that. It would be more accurate to call her a vengeful spirit with a green face and fangs. Could this possibly be the Blue Star Princess? Ling Han couldn't help but scratch his head. The Blue Star Nation was really careless. They clearly sent people to search for the missing princess, yet they didn't even hand out a portrait of the princess. So, was this green-faced, fanged mermaid really the Blue Star Princess? Shwa! This mermaid also charged back, a harpoon in her hand. As the princess of a nation, would she use such a tasteless weapon? Furthermore, you yourself are a fish, so is it really good to use a harpoon? Ling Han mocked internally as he brandished his fists. Pong! A terrifying power surged, and the mermaid's hands instantly loosened. The weapon slipped from her hands, and the web between her thumb and forefinger split open, blood dripping. The sea cucumber person hurriedly charged over as well. His whole body shook, and sharp spikes shot out madly. Ling Han activated the starlight screen, and the sharp spikes couldn't break through his defenses at all. He smiled faintly. Come, tell me about your origins. The mermaid and sea cucumber both looked stunned. This opponent was too strong. They were completely no match for him. The two of them still wanted to resist stubbornly, but Ling Han had already lost all patience. The barrage of murderous aura surged out, immediately causing the two of them to scream in pain. Of course, he had only used a little of his might. Otherwise, with this strike, the minds of the two of them would have long since been destroyed. I'll speak. I'll speak. We are the subordinates of the sea alligator, Boss Zhang. The two of them hurriedly confessed. What sea alligator, Boss Zhang? Ling Han asked. The sea cucumber man hurriedly explained. This sea alligator, Boss Zhang, was the boss of one of the two underground gangs in the slums. It was said that he had once been a general of the Blue Star Nation, but for some reason he suddenly quit the army. Instead, he went to the slums. This was a sect master elite. Thus, he quickly suppressed that slum and became the leader. Then why did you guys ambush me? Ling Han asked. The two of them stuttered for a moment before finally revealing the truth. As it turned out, Boss Zhang was also looking for the Blue Star Princess, and had sent his subordinates to search everywhere for the whereabouts of this princess, while the mermaid and sea cucumber were responsible for searching this area. Of course, they had not gained much here, but an idea came to them, and they decided to carry out a robbery here, because they knew that there would definitely be a great many outsiders that were also searching for the Blue Star Princess. However, it was a shame that their first business trip ended up encountering Ling Han. Not only did they not reap any rewards, but they even ended up as prisoners. Ling Han didn't make things difficult for the two of them. They only wanted to rob him and had no intention of killing him. Thus, after he counter-robbed them, he let the two of them leave. He searched again, but did not find any clues about the Blue Star Princess, so he could only leave. Now, there were only two places left, which were the two slums. Would the Blue Star Princess be there? In that kind of place, the boss of an underground force had extremely great power. In their territory, if someone wanted to live quietly for a period of time, the chances of this was extremely low. Then, wasn't the Blue Star Princess in these two slums? Ling Han thought for a moment, but still decided to personally take a look. He set out and soon arrived at the east side of the city. The buildings in the city were the tallest in the center, symbolizing imperial authority, and the further one went, the shorter these buildings became, and when one reached the slums, they were only a few meters tall. There were no more gorgeous adornments like corals, and they looked dilapidated. The moment Ling Han entered, he instantly attracted the gazes of many people. They all turned to look at him. However, they all ignored him, having no intention of speaking to him. After walking for a short while, two octopus people walked over and stopped him. "Our boss wants to see you," one of them said. "Who is your boss?" Ling Han asked. "Sea alligator, Boss Zhang." Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, "All right, then let's go and meet him." With these two octopus people leading the way, or rather holding him hostage, they arrived at a conch-shaped building. The room was very big. After Ling Han walked in, he suddenly felt as if he had entered into a nation of giants. Indeed, the citizens of the Blue Star Nation were generally huge in size. "You're the one who robbed my subordinates?" A voice rang out, and a sturdy man was seated at the end of the room. His upper body was human, but his lower body was a crocodile. He had two long legs and an even thicker tail, covered with green scales. Aren't crocodiles' legs very short? What breed are you considered? Ling Han mocked internally, already confirming the other's identity. The sea alligator, Boss Zhang. Ling Han's eyes swept over him. With the activation of his eye technique, he had tentatively determined that the other's cultivation level was 6-star sect master. His maximum battle prowess was around 5 stars, so he probably wouldn't be able to win against this sea crocodile person. However, with his defenses, he wouldn't necessarily lose either. They wanted to rob me, but they weren't as powerful as me. Thus, I turned around to rob them instead. Ling Han explained with a smile. Yet the sea alligator smirked coldly. On the basis that you have not hurt anyone, return the items and apologize, and I will forget the past. Ling Han shook his head. Boss Zhang is really protective of his own people. Humph, no matter how big a mistake my people have made, it is not up to others to interfere. Sea Alligator Zhang declared very domineeringly. Then I'm afraid I won't be able to comply. Ling Han stood up and was just about to leave. Humph, did I allow you to leave? The sea alligator said menacingly. Suddenly, he stretched out a hand and grabbed out at Ling Han. Ling Han replied with a punch of his own. Pong! The two of them exchanged a blow, instantly creating powerful ripples of water, causing the conch house to instantly shatter. Thankfully, this seawater had a very strong digestive ability for power, and added with the fact that the structures here were extraordinarily sturdy, when the conch house was shattered, the remaining power had more or less dissipated. The sea alligator was astonished, and looked at Ling Han in disbelief. Was this guy really spirit transformation tier? Ling Han cracked a smile. I am indeed a spirit transformation tier, as real as can be. Boss Zhang, are you still going to stop me from leaving? The sea alligator was incredibly stunned. What kind of spirit transformation tier was this? This was too terrifying, wasn't it? It should be known that he was a 6-star sect master, and to only be at a slight disadvantage even in a head-on clash with him, this kind of strength was truly heaven-defying. He was a decisive person, and he immediately nodded. Those two subordinates of mine are blind. I'll apologize to you on their behalf. If a spirit transformation tier cultivator provoked a sect master, based on the hierarchy of martial arts, this was a crime of great rebellion. The sect master was completely capable of killing him. How could the authority of the sect master be slighted? However, Ling Han had only turned around to rob the two of them, and had not taken their lives. From this aspect, it could be said that he was incredibly generous. Thus, when the sea alligator Zhang discovered that Ling Han had battle prowess on the level of sect master, he immediately turned around to apologize to Ling Han. Ling Han smiled and said, Boss Zhang is too polite. As an apology, I'll treat you to a meal. The sea alligator was very direct. Ling Han politely refused. The members of the sea race ate raw food and didn't use firewood, so he wasn't used to eating their food. Boss! At this moment, a crabman suddenly rushed in. What's going on? The sea alligator glanced at him, appearing slightly displeased. He was so flustered, had he forgotten how he usually taught them? There's news about the Blue Star Princess, the crabman hurriedly replied. And the sea alligator Zhang immediately stood up. Ling Han was also surprised. He had not thought that he would actually have an unexpected gain from this trip. The sea alligator hesitated slightly, but did not keep their words from Ling Han either, and asked, What news? Someone said that they have information about the Blue Star Princess, and are currently selling it everywhere, the crabman said. The sea alligator Zhang immediately humphed and said, How dare they, to even dare to earn such money? Meanwhile, Ling Han was slightly surprised. Judging by the way the sea alligator was speaking, he seemed to be on the side of the Blue Star royal family. Then why had he left the army in the first place, and come here to become a boss? The sea alligator looked at Ling Han, and couldn't help but smile. Looks like we won't be saying goodbye for the moment. Hee hee. Ling Han laughed as well. At present, everyone was searching for the Blue Star Princess, and this was no secret. Lead the way, the sea crocodile said to the crabman. They set out and soon arrived at a place in the city. Unexpectedly, there was actually a queue here, and from the scraps of information, they had all come to find out about the disappearance of the Blue Star Princess. People came out one after another, and immediately left in large strides. Had they gotten a clue and begun their search? Finally, it was Ling Han and the sea alligator's turn. The two of them entered, and there was only a snakeman sitting here. Although he had a human face, his hair was like small snakes that were sleeping. So it is a rotten snake like you. Sea alligator Zhang immediately humphed, his eyes revealing a sliver of killing intent. Please calm your anger, General Zhang. The snakeman hurriedly put on a smile and said, I'm a citizen of this nation, so all I earn is lawful money. I have long since ceased to be a general of the nation. The sea alligator shook his head, but there was a sliver of nostalgia in his eyes. General Zhang, are you underestimating my ability to gather intel? The snakeman said with a smile. He even blinked at the sea alligator. On the basis that you're General Zhang, I'll give you a 60% discount and collect 12 drops of conch spirit from you. You really dare to ask? The sea alligator humphed. The princess of the royal family has also become a tool for you to earn money? Hehe. I have so many lackeys, so we have to earn a living somehow. General Zhang, don't you have to take care of a large group of people? You have to take care of even their daily necessities, so you definitely can understand me. The snakeman put on a humble attitude. The sea alligator hesitated for a moment, then threw out a bottle. Then he said, if you give me false information, then chop off your own head. Don't worry. I've always been a trustworthy businessman, and I definitely won't screw others over, the snakeman said with a smile as he put the vial away. Speak, the sea alligator said darkly, his expression definitely not looking good. 6 kilometers east of the green source trench, someone picked up the bracelet that the princess had dropped. The snakeman revealed the news. This bit of information was worth 12 drops of conch spirit, and it was under the condition of a 40% discount. Ling Han knew that the conch spirit was an extremely valuable treasure in the Blue Star Nation. It could help the members of the sea race improve their bloodline. The sea alligator immediately turned around and left. Ling Han naturally left as well. When they walked out, they shockingly discovered that the entrance had actually been cleared. There were more than 20 guards standing guard, shooing the others aside. A man in purple gold scales strode over. There were barely any traces of the sea race on him, and only his hands were claws, exuding a baleful chill. When he saw sea alligator Zhang and Ling Han, he humphed and said, Don't block my path, scram. There was no prince in the Blue Star Nation. Jiao Dili. The sea alligator opened his mouth, his eyes focused on this armored man. Oh, and who might this be? So it's General Zhang. Jiao Dili smiled proudly. However, I heard that General Zhang has already removed his armor and returned to the fields? Humph. If the underworld nation dares to attack, you guys will still see me on the battlefield. Sea alligator Zhang retorted. As it turned out, this person was the prince of the underworld nation. His fiancée had gone missing, so it was logical for him to come out and look for her. However, wasn't this attitude a little too arrogant? He had not married the princess yet, and he was already treating this place as his own territory? Yet Jiao Dili laughed loudly. General Zhang must be joking. When I marry the Blue Star Princess, the Underworld Nation and Blue Star Nation would be one family, so how could there be any mention of attack? Hee. The sea alligator merely responded with a smile and strode off. Ling Han naturally would not deal with this prince of the Underworld Nation and followed the sea alligator. Instead, it was Jiao Dili. His eyes paused on Ling Han, as if he was curious why sea alligator Zhang was involved with a human. However, he quickly withdrew his gaze and strode into the house. His fiancée had gone missing, and whether she had run away on her own volition or been kidnapped, it was a matter that would greatly damage his pride. Thus, he had to find the missing princess as soon as possible. Ling Han followed the sea alligator. Soon, they left the city and arrived at a massive oceanic trench. There was a large amount of green seaweed in the oceanic trench. No wonder it was called the Green Source Trench. After walking along the oceanic trench for a while, the sea alligator stopped and began to search extremely carefully. There were signs of a battle here. However, this was the ocean bed, and there were always ocean currents surging here. Many days had already passed, so what other clues could they find? After a while, the sea alligator shook his head, appearing very disappointed. The trail had been cut off again. Unable to find any useful clues, sea alligator Zhang's mood was not very high. He merely smiled at Ling Han and left. Meanwhile, Ling Han circled around for a while longer. Unfortunately, he had not grasped the regulations of time. Otherwise, if he traced back time, he might discover something. Previously, he had always suspected that the Blue Star Princess had fled from the marriage, but since traces of a fight had been discovered here, and there was even a bracelet worn by the princess, it meant that this princess had really been kidnapped now. In the distance, Zhao Dilei was presently swimming over rapidly, and there was a team of guards behind him. It was a very extravagant display. Scram! When Zhao Dilei saw Ling Han, he immediately rebuked coldly. Ling Han wasn't Sea Alligator Zhang. He had regained his arrogant attitude. Hee. Ling Han merely smiled faintly and ignored him. I told you to scram. Don't you have ears? Zhao Dilei said balefully. He hadn't been in a good mood these past few days. If anyone dared to trifle with him now, they would become his punching bag. Ling Han still ignored him. Now that the trail was cut off again, should he give up on the idea of finding the princess to collect the bounty? Human! You actually dare to ignore me? Zhao Dilei was furious and waved a claw. Apprehend him! Instantly, those guards swam out and surrounded Ling Han. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh in spite of himself. That so-called prince, this is the Blue Star Nation, so isn't it a little too early for you to issue commands now? Sooner or later, it'll be my territory. So what does it matter if it is earlier? Zhao Dilei humphed. Instantly, the guards all charged out, attacking Ling Han. The weapons of these guards varied. Some used harpoons, some used halberds, but all of them were spirit tools. After awakening, they shone brightly. Ling Han shook his head as he unleashed his murderous aura. Wang, a spiritual attack shot out. Pa! These guards instantly rolled their eyes into the back of their heads, and all of them passed out. And this was still because Ling Han had held back. Otherwise, what spirit transformation tier cultivator could withstand the barrage of his murderous aura? Zhao Dilei was stunned upon seeing his guards floating along with the sea currents. However, he was more so infuriated and humiliated. He was indeed astonished by Ling Han's strength. Ling Han didn't even raise his hand, and his spirit transformation tier guards all fell to the ground. However, what followed was fury. He was the son of the underworld king, so how could it be that he couldn't capture a single person? Human, immediately kneel down and surrender. Don't force me to make a move personally, he said balefully. No matter how strong you are, so what? After all, you are only a spirit transformation tier, and what about him? A 4-star sect master. Ling Han cracked a smile. I have always been the type to not offend others if they did not offend me. If you insist on offending me, that would only be asking for your own suffering. He took the initiative to charge out, charging towards Zhao Dilei. You're seeking death, Zhao Dilei said with a cold chuckle. He swung his claw, and hong! 5 streaks of cold light slashed toward Ling Han. These 5 flashes of cold light were all formed by regulations, as if they were ice. Ling Han was unafraid, and shot out a punch to greet the incoming attack. Pong! Under the barrage of the punch, the 5 flashes of cold light immediately crumbled. Ling Han was only slightly slowed down, and then charged towards Zhao Dilei again. What? This time, Zhao Dilei was finally shocked. Previously, though he knew that Ling Han's strength was extraordinary, he was only a spirit transformation tier after all, so how could he compare to the strength of a sect master? But now that they had exchanged blows, he realized that not only did Ling Han possess sect master-level battle prowess, it was even possible that Ling Han possessed battle prowess above his. How could this not make him pale in shock? At the first instant, he drew out the spirit tool. It was a 3-pronged halberd that stabbed towards Ling Han. Boom! The spirit tool revived, shining brilliantly. This was a 6-star spirit tool, and it was a treasure of this level at that. After he activated it, it released a might that reached the level of 9-star sect master. The regulations appeared, turning into multiple small flood dragons that entwined around the 3-pronged spirit tool. Ling Han didn't dare to face it head-on. He could only retreat with a tap of his foot. Seeing that he had forced Ling Han to retreat with a single strike, Zhao Dilei instantly regained his confidence. Ha ha ha! He laughed loudly. This was the power of the royal family. Idiot! Ling Han scoffed. The murderous aura burst forth. Wang, Zhao Dilei immediately gave a muffled humph. tears of blood streaming from his eyes. He wasn't an imperial son, possessing a treasure of spiritual power that a great emperor had created. Thus, he was naturally unable to block the murderous aura. So what if his cultivation level was higher than Ling Han's? So what if he had a 6-star spirit tool? It was already very impressive that he hadn't been insta-killed. Zhao Delii finally understood what method Ling Han had used to knock out his subordinates. Even his eyes were bleeding and tearing. How could spirit transformation tears stand against that? However, knowing was one thing, but how was he supposed to defend? This was practically impossible to guard against. You, who exactly are you? He was a little fierce on the surface, but cowardly on the inside. That was because Ling Han possessed the ability to wound him, or even kill him. Furthermore, this was outside the city, and Ling Han was an outsider. He could completely just kill him and leave. Ling Han ignored him, and merely unleashed another murderous aura attack. Ah! Zhao Delii clutched his head, appearing to be in extreme pain. How was he supposed to defend against this? He had already set up a mystical power shield. In fact, he had even covered his body with regulations, but that attack had still shot over, completely unaffected. It should be known that even if it was an attack of spiritual power, completely unrelated to the mystical power, it was one thing for the mystical power shield to be ineffective, but the regulations were superior to spiritual power. Why was it that even the shield of regulations could not block it? Without waiting for him to mull over it, Hong, Hong, Hong. The murderous aura struck him wave after wave, forcing him to retreat continuously. Not only were his eyes bleeding, but even his 7 apertures were bleeding. I'll teach you a lesson this time. Remember, if you're not in your own territory, then behave. Ling Han said calmly, then turned and left. He didn't deliver a fatal strike, mainly because this was the territory of the sea race. Once he killed Zhao Delii, that king from the Blue Star Nation would probably move as well. That was a venerate tier elite. After returning to the city, Ling Han was hesitating about whether he should leave or not. After waiting for 2 days, a huge piece of news suddenly spread out. The Blue Star Nation's princess had indeed been kidnapped. Moreover, the kidnapping party had even issued a ransom demand, forcing the Blue Star Nation's king to abdicate. Had this kidnapping agent taken the wrong medicine? He wanted to become a king just like that after the king abdicated? All of a sudden, everyone thought that there was something wrong with this kidnapping agent or this group of kidnapping agents. However, as more information was revealed, no one thought so. That was because the leader of the kidnappers was shockingly the younger brother of the current ruler of the Blue Star Nation. In the past, he had left angrily because he was displeased that the previous king had passed the throne to his older brother. One had not thought that after so many years had passed, he would still be so malicious. He had kidnapped the Blue Star Princess and directly threatened the king into abdicating. Not only did this enrage the entire Blue Star Nation, but even the Underworld Nation expressed their strong indignation, expressing their willingness to fully and unconditionally support the Blue Star Nation. They were determined to save the Blue Star Princess. It was understandable that the Underworld Nation was so furious, because once the Blue Star King accepted the condition, wouldn't the peace between the two sides come to nothing? Even if it didn't come to nothing, what was the point of Zhao Delii marrying the Blue Star Princess? Could he still use this political marriage to annex the Blue Star Nation? Thus, they naturally had to spare no effort to support the Blue Star Nation. Only a few days later, the general of the Underworld Nation, Zhao Yuan, brought a team of elites over. Zhao Yuan was the younger brother of the king of the Underworld Nation, and was also the second strongest elite in the Underworld Nation, a 3-star venerate tier elite. In the team, there were as many as 9 elites at sect master level. It could be said that the Underworld Nation had really invested a lot, sending half of the strongest elites of their nation over. Uncle! In the temporary residence that the Blue Star Nation had specially prepared for the Underworld Nation, Zhao Delii paid his respects to Zhao Yuan. Firstly, this was his uncle, a senior, and secondly, and most importantly, he was a venerate tier elite who could crush him with a single finger. Zhao Yuan raised his hand and asked, "How's the situation now?" "The Blue Star King is still considering," Zhao Delii said. Zhao Yuan pondered for a moment, We have to rescue the Blue Star Princess as soon as possible. Understood, Zhao Delii replied with a nod. This marriage was related to their plan to annex the Blue Star Nation, and without the Blue Star Princess, they naturally wouldn't need to think about anything beyond that. Go on. Zhao Yuan waved him off. Uncle. Zhao Delii wanted to say something but hesitated. What is it? Zhao Yuan asked. Zhao Delii hesitated for a moment, then said, Nephew would like to ask uncle to suppress a human. Oh! Zhao Yuan couldn't help but laugh in spite of himself. Amongst the humans that came in this time, could it be that there are venerate tears among them? Zhao Delii revealed an awkward expression and said, That human is a spirit transformation tier. Spirit transformation tier? Zhao Yuan was truly shocked at this moment. He swept an eye over Zhao Yuan, revealing his displeasure. Are you playing with me? To ask for his help to suppress a mere spirit transformation tier? Who do you think I am? Uncle, this spirit transformation tier is extremely strange. His battle prowess is at least comparable to a 5-star sect master. Zhao Delii hurriedly explained. Zhao Yuan laughed in spite of himself. Naturally, he did not believe it at all. A spirit transformation tier possessed battle prowess on the level of sect master, and it was on the level of 5 stars at that. Why don't you say that he can even kill venerate tier elites? It's true, Zhao Delii hurriedly emphasized, and related his previous exchange with Ling Han. After hearing this, Zhao Yuan's expression became slightly serious, but then his expression relaxed. No matter how freakish that human was, he was only a spirit transformation tier cultivator. Being able to match a sect master was already his limit. Compared to venerate tier, the gulf between them was naturally insurmountable. The most important thing now is to find the Blue Star Princess. Everything else can be set aside first, Zhao Yuan emphasized. Understood, Zhao Delii replied respectfully. No matter how domineering he was, he wouldn't dare to ruin this important matter. Another few days later, the location of Sha Yuanxing's lair was unexpectedly exposed. Sha Yuanxing was the younger brother of the sovereign of the Blue Star Nation, and was also the leader of the kidnapping squad this time round. It was like this. One of his subordinates had entered into the city to gather information, yet accidentally let the cat out of the bag. In the end, he just happened to be apprehended by a member of the underworld nation, and under strict interrogation, the location of Sha Yuanxing's lair was forced out of him. Now, Zhao Yuan had already moved out with elites, wanting to personally rescue the Blue Star Princess. When the news spread out, the outsiders from the Blue Star Nation also moved out one after another. They were naturally no match for Zhao Yuan, a venerate tier elite. However, they weren't going to face Zhao Yuan head-on. Instead, they were going to take advantage of the stalemate between Zhao Yuan and Sha Yuanxing to rescue the Blue Star Princess first and return to collect the bounty. Who didn't know how to fish in troubled waters? Ling Han followed behind the team led by Zhao Yuan. They left the city and headed north. Setting aside the factor of water, there was actually not much difference between the ocean bed and land. Though there were no trees, there were corals and seaweed. Though it was dark, cultivators would not be affected at all in such an environment. They traversed many oceanic trenches and mountain peaks, and finally, they arrived in front of a massive coral forest. Sha Yuanxing's lair should be here. Boom! Zhao Yuan unleashed his aura like a tidal wave as he sent a message through divine sense to Zhao Delii, saying, I'll hold Sha Yuanxing back, and you take the chance to rescue the Blue Star Princess. He didn't say that he wanted to kill Sha Yuanxing, because Sha Yuanxing was also a venerate tier at most. His abilities were slightly inferior to his, so how could it be easy to kill him? Yes, uncle. Zhao Delii nodded. This was naturally a good chance for him to perform. Being rescued from isolation and helplessness, a young girl's heart was the easiest to be touched. She would definitely fall in love with him at first sight. Zhao Yuan. A deep voice rang out, and a man walked out from the coral. He strode forwards boldly, his royal air filled with confidence. Sha Yuanxing. Zhao Yuan shouted loudly. Hand over the Blue Star Princess, or I will behead you today. Sha Yuanxing smiled faintly. Why have you come here instead of staying quietly in your underworld nation? Hehe. When did the underworld nation become Sha Tongyu's lackey? Humph. Looks like you're determined to force me to make a move. Zhao Yuan immediately charged towards Sha Yuanxing. You're only a 2-star venerate tier. Do you think I don't know your strength? The two of them exchanged blows. Boom! The terrifying commotion instantly shook the heavens and earth. This was a venerate tier-level battle. Let's go! Zhao Dilei waved his hand, indicating for those sect master-level elites to follow. He was extremely at ease. His uncle was a 3-star venerate tier, so victory was naturally within his grasp. Moreover, Zhao Yuan didn't want to kill Sha Yuanxing, so he naturally wouldn't push him too far, forcing Sha Yuanxing to put his life on the line. Not only him, but the others also followed suit, sneaking into the coral forest. After all, this was Sha Yuanxing's lair, and who knew how many elites were still lying in ambush here. Thus, it was naturally best to be careful. However, as they ventured deeper and deeper, they didn't come across any ambushes. It was just that this coral forest was extremely complicated. After circling around it, they suddenly realized that they had actually exited the coral forest somehow. Ling Han naturally entered into the coral forest as well, but he was very unfortunate. At the first instant, he bumped into Guan Xinghan, who immediately charged towards him. There was no need to linger in battle. Ling Han immediately fled, and then used the strange shadow steps to sneak back. If it weren't for the fact that he was in a rush to find the Blue Star Princess, Ling Han wouldn't have minded dealing a blow to Guan Xinghan. However, the gap in cultivation level between the two of them was extremely large. Even if he successfully launched a sneak attack, he would still suffer a backlash and pay a corresponding price. Thus, he decided to look for the Blue Star Princess first. The coral forest was incredibly complicated, but it could not hold up to the fact that Ling Han's ability of deduction was too strong. Very soon, he had made heads or tails of the situation. He searched and could practically guarantee that he would not take the same path twice. Close to half a day later, he passed through a coral cave, and the space ahead of him suddenly opened up, revealing a conch-shaped building. It was not very tall. Otherwise, it could not have possibly been hidden in the coral forest. He used his divine sense to sense the surroundings, and discovered that there was someone inside. Was it the Blue Star Princess? With a sweep of his divine sense, all the details were practically revealed to Ling Han, as if he could see them with the naked eye. This was a mermaid. The upper half of her body was human, while the lower half was a fishtail. Her hair was crimson red, and she was astonishingly beautiful. Spirit transformation tier. When Ling Han sensed the other's cultivation level, he strode in. Pooh! This mermaid was eating, and when she saw Ling Han walk in, she instantly spluttered out all the food in her mouth. Then, she looked dumbly at Ling Han, her face filled with shock. Was this how a captive should look like? Ling Han cracked a smile. Your Highness, it's time to go home. The mermaid looked at him dumbly. Why is it you? Where's Uncle? Fuck. This seemed to be a huge trap. Shouldn't the Blue Star Princess be wild with joy upon seeing someone come to her rescue? But what kind of expression did she have? Her face was filled with shock. Moreover, as a hostage, why was she still in such a good mood to eat? Moreover, she had even addressed Sha Yuanxing as uncle. There was something fishy. There was a trap. Of course, this trap was not meant for him, but rather targeted the underworld nation. Ling Han felt that everything was too coincidental. You see, in a situation when they were completely clueless, the specific information about the princess being kidnapped was suddenly revealed. Through the mouth of a snakeman, they were lured to the green source trench, which then led to Sha Yuanxing. Because it involved the issue of annexing the Blue Star Nation, the underworld nation could no longer sit still, and sent out Zhao Yuan to assist, fearing that Sha Tongyu would not be able to hold up and surrender his throne. It was too coincidental. Sha Yuanxing's subordinate just happened to bump into someone from the underworld nation, and he had even let the cat out of the bag, revealing the location of Sha Yuanxing's lair. If everything was too coincidental, then it was completely deliberately planned. Ling Han mocked internally, yet a smile appeared on his face, and he said, My name is Ling Han, and I have deliberately come to save your highness. I don't need you to save me. You can leave. The Blue Star Princess waved her hand, looking like she was in a hurry to chase him away. Compared with the cunning and wily Sha brothers, this princess really did not have much subtlety. However, it was precisely because of this that she appeared adorable. Your Highness, there is no need to be afraid. Your uncle is being held back by Zhao Yuan, and now is the best time to flee, Ling Han said, deliberately teasing this princess. The Blue Star Princess hurriedly shook her head. You don't understand. What do I not understand? Ling Han asked. Because the Blue Star Princess was only innocent, but she was not stupid. Realizing that she was about to spill the beans, she hurriedly covered her mouth with her hand. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, Then let me guess. Could it be that the real purpose of this so-called disappearance of the princess is to kill Zhao Yuan? How did you know? The Blue Star Princess blurted out. Then, she immediately realized that something was off, and instantly, her expression was filled with regret. Ling Han smiled and said, It's all right. I guessed this myself, so it has nothing to do with you. That's right. You guessed it, but I didn't say it, the Blue Star Princess murmured. Comforting herself, she immediately smiled again, appearing a little endearingly silly. Ling Han echoed her words and said, So because you're suppressing such a secret in your heart, you can't tell anyone, so you must be feeling very depressed, right? I'm about to die from suffocation. The Blue Star Princess nodded repeatedly. This was a friend that knew her well. In any case, I've already guessed it now, so why don't you tell me? Ling Han said with a smile. The Blue Star Princess hesitated for a moment, appearing slightly hesitant. However, upon further thought, Ling Han had indeed guessed their ultimate motive, so the details naturally weren't important anymore. Most importantly, she really felt uncomfortable from holding it in and wanted to share it with someone. The matter had to start from a long time ago. Long ago, when the current king of the underworld nation had just ascended the throne, Sha Tongyu and Sha Yuanxing had already felt that this person was filled with ambition. One day he would make a move on the Blue Star Nation. As expected, the underworld nation continued to make small moves after this, waging war repeatedly, wanting to use force to force the Blue Star Nation to submit. However, the Blue Star Nation was protected by an ancient formation, so even if the overall power of the nation was inferior to the underworld nation, it would only be empty words to say that the underworld nation would destroy the Blue Star Nation. However, this wasn't a good idea. After all, who would want to be pummeled all the time? Thus, Sha Tongyu and his brother began to lay out their plans. Firstly, they had created signs of discord between brothers fighting over the throne. Sha Yuanxing had left angrily, causing the Blue Star Nation to feel as if they'd been crippled. Then, under the continuously strengthening oppression of the underworld nation, the Blue Star Nation put on a posture of seeking peace, intending to have the crown prince and crown princess of the two nations get married. For the underworld nation, this was naturally what they wanted. As long as they gave birth to a descendant that possessed the bloodline of the royal family of the Blue Star Nation, they would be able to control the ancient formation of the Blue Star Nation and complete their dream of annexing the Blue Star Nation. However, this was a huge trap. The Blue Star Nation had created a false image of the princess's disappearance. Of course, for the sake of authenticity, the Blue Star Princess had indeed been brought out of the palace, and she had been kidnapped by the infamous Sha Yuanxing. Because the plan had been laid out for many years, when they found out, the underworld nation did not suspect anything. Instead, they mobilized Zhao Yuan, bringing with them almost half the sect master elites of the nation, to guarantee that they would definitely rescue the Blue Star Princess and complete the mission of the two royal families uniting through marriage. However, what awaited Zhao Yuan was the combined forces of Sha Yuanxing and Sha Yuanxing. Once Zhao Yuan died, and added with that half of the sect master elites of the nation, the underground nation's vitality would naturally be greatly damaged. To say nothing of invading the Blue Star Nation, they could only depend on the ancient formation to struggle at death's door. In this way, not only could the Blue Star Nation be safe and sound, it could even ensure that it would flourish for tens of thousands of years or even longer. As for Sea Alligator Zhang, He belonged to the category of powerful people that the Blue Star Nation had removed, putting on a display of weakness for the Underworld Nation. Additionally, it was also because the Blue Star Nation wanted to clean up the slums. Since it was impossible to get rid of all these local ruffians, it would be better to keep them under the control of their own people. Why couldn't the Blue Star Princess leave even though Zhao Yuan had already fallen into the trap? That was because Zhao Yuan was a 3-star Venerate tier elite after all. Even if Sha Tongyu and his brother teamed up, it would not be an easy feat to kill him. If he was determined to flee, and if worse came to worst, he would have to pay some price, but he would definitely be able to escape. Thus, in order to ensure that Zhao Yuan was killed, they had to set up a formation so that he would not be able to easily escape. Moreover, Venerate tier elites were too powerful, so this formation definitely couldn't be set up in advance. If there was the slightest bit of aura leaking out, Zhao Yuan would definitely be able to see through it. Thus, the Blue Star Princess couldn't appear now. Once she escaped, there would be no point for Zhao Yuan to continue battling. Whether he realized something was off or not, he would definitely flee. Ling Han nodded. Looks like Zhao Yuan wouldn't be able to escape death this time. However, this had nothing to do with him. Heir, if I bring you back to the palace, will the bounty still be valid? Ling Han asked. It should be. The Blue Star Princess nodded. After all, this was the words of the royal family. Even if it was for the sake of screwing over the Underworld Nation, it could not be so easily annulled, and break their word so easily. That's good. Ling Han nodded. Boom! The ground suddenly started to tremor violently, and it was as if it were about to collapse. The Great Formation is activated. Blue Star Princess looked into the distance. From this position, she could easily see a massive blue screen of light in the distance. That direction was where Sha Yuanxing and Zhao Yuan had been battling. Let's go, let's go. The Blue Star Princess appeared slightly excited. She could only stay in the coral forest these few days, which made her feel extremely uncomfortable. Ling Han smiled and left with Blue Star Princess. After swimming for a while, and just when they were about to come out of the coral forest, they suddenly bumped into a group of people. Zhao Diliai, what a pitiful child, Ling Han thought. It's you. Zhao Diliai's eyes suddenly widened, revealing an angry and embarrassed expression. Ling Han actually managed to save the Blue Star Princess before he did. This was too despicable. The Blue Star Princess also widened her small mouth, and her pretty face flushed as she buried her head in her hands. After all, this was a trap laid against the Underworld Nation, and she was the most important part of it. With how easily embarrassed she was, now that she had seen the victim of their plans, she would naturally feel guilty. However, when Zhao Diliai saw this, suspicion instantly rose up in his heart. Why did she look like she had done something wrong the moment she saw him? She was clearly the one who had been kidnapped, yet it was as if she had betrayed him? How could it be? He looked towards Ling Han, his eyes practically popping out. Had he been cuckolded? Detestable human! He cursed in a low voice. This was the only possibility. Otherwise, why would the Blue Star Princess look guilty the moment she saw him? Seeing the fury on his face, Ling Han couldn't help but feel awkward. You have misunderstood. Furthermore, you have to think about it. The Blue Star Princess was a fish in the first place, so how was he supposed to make a move? Kill him. Zhao Diliai pointed at Ling Han. Instantly, the 9 sect masters behind him all turned to look at Ling Han, revealing baleful expressions. Merely a spirit transformation tier. Let me deal with him, a crabman said, moving his 8 legs at a surprisingly fast speed. Then, with a wave of his 2 large pincers, he scissored towards Ling Han. 3-star sect master? Ling Han shook his head. This was delivering himself to death. If the Blue Star Nation hadn't set a trap for the Underworld Nation, Ling Han would have to think about it. If he killed this person, he definitely wouldn't be able to go to the Blue Star Nation to collect the bounty. Whether increasing his cultivation level was more important or venting his anger was more important would be worth considering. But now, he did not have the slightest bit of reservations. He greeted the incoming attack, brandishing his fists in a rapid barrage. Pong! It was only a single strike, and the crabman was sent flying. Cracks appeared on his pincers. What? Seeing this scene, those elites of the underworld nation were all dumbfounded, completely unable to believe their eyes. What kind of fucking spirit transformation tier are you? Even the Blue Star Princess was gaping, looking at Ling Han in shock. Impressive. Only Zhao Diliai's reaction was slightly better, but he still felt a sliver of shock. That was because he knew just how sturdy the pincers of the crabman were. They were comparable to 6-star divine metal, and a crack had actually appeared on them from a single punch. Just how terrifying was the destructive power of this punch. Attack! Attack together! However, he immediately roared, "This freakish human can't be judged with common sense." The remaining 8 elites all walked out. There were sea horsemen, murlocs, and sea turtle men, and they all drew their spirit tools. Some had a cultivation level as high as 7 stars. Though their spirit tools were not as strong as Zhao Diliai's, when the 9 of them attacked together, their might was still terrifying. A worried expression immediately appeared on the Blue Star Princess's face. These 9 great generals were also the people that they planned to kill together this time, but this coral forest was too big. The elites that the Blue Star Nation had laid in ambush could not find them easily just like that. Now that Ling Han was facing it alone, the situation was very dire. Zhao Diliai saw this, and couldn't help but feel even more certain. This was an adulterous couple. You see, he had not even made a move from his side, and the Blue Star Princess was already so worried. No man could tolerate this. Yet Ling Han was eager to give it a try. With a battle cry, he took the initiative to attack. "You're seeking death. What an ignorant human." The 9 great generals all smirked coldly. Though Ling Han had previously displayed strength that surpassed the crabman, it was only comparable to a 5-star sect master at most. However, among the 9 of them, there were 3 that had attained 5 stars or even actually surpassed that level. They all moved to counterattack. Various regulations manifested, their brilliance shaking the skies. Ling Han smiled and unleashed his murderous aura. Ah! Woo! E! All of a sudden, the 9 great generals all showed expressions of pain. Those above 5 stars were still fine and recovered after a little pain, but the 6 below 5 stars were miserable. All of them were bleeding from their 7 apertures. One of them had even directly lost his battle prowess, and his whole person was floating, stomach facing upwards. Holy fuck! You are only in the spirit transformation tier and faced 9 great sect masters alone. You actually did not even raise your hand and caused the 9 great elites to suffer a loss. In fact, one of them had directly passed out. Monster! Since Ling Han had made his move, how could he be merciful? He waved his hands and reaped the harvest without any mercy. Pong! Destructive energy was wrapped around his fist, and with a single punch, he had directly pierced through the chest of a swordfish man. Boom! The murderous aura surged again, and instantly terrible screams rang out again. Aside from 3 sect masters that had reached 5 stars and more that continued to push their attacks over, 4 of the remaining 5 people were grabbing their heads and screaming. The last one was the one who had been knocked unconscious previously. This time, his mind had directly exploded, and he had died. He had only made 2 moves, and 2 sect masters had already died by Ling Han's hand. It was as if they were not people that could be considered great elites at all, but mere commoners that could be killed easily. Ling Han used Phoenix Wing's divine flight and quickly left the battle area, dodging the 3 attacks that were aimed at him. Under the barrage of the murderous aura, Ling Han wasn't afraid of being ganged up on at all, unless all of them were far more powerful than him. Right now, his soul was already perfect. In fact, it was even being purified further on the foundations of perfection. Just how terrifying was this? The Blue Star Princess's small mouth was gaping, while her hands were pressing down on her chest, as if she feared that her heart would jump out of her chest if she was too shocked. Meanwhile, Zhao Diliai's hair was dancing wildly in his fury. His hands were tightly clenched into fists, and he had used so much force that the veins on his forehead were popping. "I'm going to kill you." He brandished his 3-pronged halberd and joined the battle. Humph! Ling Han was completely unafraid and charged out again. The murderous aura continued to blast out, greatly disintegrating his opponent's battle prowess and coordination. Then he could do as he liked. Waving his fists, he was agile, imposing, and majestic. This was the path of cultivation that he had walked, and now, he was playing it out to his heart's content. A maniac of martial arts like him would definitely use every opportunity to increase his strength. I should give this fist technique a name. A thought suddenly occurred to Ling Han. This actually couldn't be called a fist technique because there was no fixed technique. It was just a way of using energy and regulations. It can't be called the fists of fury anymore. I have neither joy nor sorrow now, and let nature take its course. Since my name is Ling Han, I'll call it Han Fists. He had always been an idiot when it came to naming. Just look at the pet beasts by his side. They were all like Little Red and Little White, and now this had finally brought disaster to his path of cultivation as well. If the future generations were to study the fist technique that Ling Han had created, they would definitely praise it greatly and complain endlessly at the same time. How could Ling Han come up with such a name that was not impressive or domineering at all? Ling Han was immersed in his own world. He used the Han Fists, and various high-level energies were continuously combined, attempting to unleash the strongest destructive power. Meanwhile, regulations was freely used, turning into saber flashes, sword flashes, and projections, all of them overbearing in their might. Zhao Delii and the others all roared in fury. They clearly had the upper hand in terms of battle prowess, yet were completely unable to do anything against Ling Han. Instead, they were being punched left and right, continuously losing members. Crazy, they were really going crazy. What kind of spirit transformation tier was this? A great battle ensued. On Zhao Diliai's side, the number of people was continuously decreasing. At the beginning, there were 10 of them, but 2 of them had died right from the start. The remaining people were quite hardworking, and only after fighting for half an hour did another 2 die. These were all below 5 stars in battle prowess, and above 5 stars, even if they were affected by the barrage of murderous aura, it was still difficult to deal with them. This was especially the case for that 7-star sect master. The might of his counterattack could not be underestimated. With a single strike, the regulations directly slashed into Ling Han's mind, preventing him from expelling it for at least a minute. He had to focus his divine sense before blasting the murderous aura again. Moreover, he had only been caught off guard by Ling Han at the beginning. Now that he had regained his footing, and with Zhao Diliai's participation, he possessed a spirit tool that could unleash a battle prowess of 9 stars. It was extremely powerful. If it was not for the fact that Zhao Diliai was selfish and insisted on stimulating this tool by himself, then having the 7-star sect master stimulate the spirit tool, the pressure on Ling Han would undoubtedly be even greater. Right now, Ling Han was using the Phoenix Wing's divine flight. The seawater evaporated continuously, and a vacuum was actually created from the heat. He moved unhindered here and there, and Zhao Diliai and the others couldn't even touch a corner of his clothes. Their expressions changed drastically. If this continued, they would lose more members. Who would have thought that this spirit transformation tier would be so freakish? Zhao Diliai was already filled with regret. After impulsively attacking, he realized that he may have misunderstood. In such a short amount of time, how could the Blue Star Princess possibly fall in love with Ling Han at first sight? Furthermore, an adulterous relationship had happened in such a dangerous place? But now that things had come to this, even if he was willing to give up, what about the deaths of the 4 great generals? Only killing Ling Han would appease the fury of the underworld nation. However, how was he supposed to kill Ling Han? Before this, who would have thought that a spirit transformation tier would be so hard to kill? He gritted his teeth and said, "General Tai, you control the spirit tool. I'll go and inform Uncle that the princess has been rescued, and there's no need to continue fighting. He'll move to kill this human." One of the shark men took the spirit tool and nodded. All right. He was the 7-star sect master, and added with this spirit tool, he alone was enough to suppress Ling Han. He should have done so long ago. There is no need for you all to be here. All of you, go and protect the prince. With the halberd in hand, the shark man appeared mighty and powerful. Yes, the other sect masters all nodded. Zhao Dilei glanced at Ling Han again, then suddenly turned around and left. Ling Han didn't give chase. The shark man could be considered a powerful opponent, and he couldn't be careless. Zhao Dilei and the others left, yet the shark man was in no rush to make a move. Ling Han's movement technique was too agile, and he had no confidence that he could capture him. Thus, he only had to detain Ling Han here as much as possible, and when Zhao Yuan arrived, killing Ling Han would be a piece of cake. Since the other party didn't make a move, Ling Han had no interest in making a move either. He merely said calmly, "I'm afraid I have to tell you some unfortunate news. That General Zhao of yours is really going to be burnt this time." The shark man smirked coldly. "Exaggerating." Ling Han shrugged and said, "Believe it or not, it's up to you. You can wait and see if it's Zhao Yuan who comes or the person who's going to kill you." The sharkman's expression involuntarily changed drastically. He carefully recalled the entire process, and then his expression became uglier and uglier. In fact, even his body was trembling slightly. "Ling Han, how could you tell him?" the Blue Star Princess asked in slight displeasure. Ling Han smiled. "It's all right. In any case, Zhao Yuan has already fallen into the Great Formation, and there are two great elites besieging him. He is like a fish in a pond, and would not be able to do much." "That's true." The Blue Star Princess was indeed easily deceived, and nodded. Hearing these words, the sharkman's heart became even more fervent. Was this really a trap? He hurriedly turned around and chased after Zhao Dilei and the others. He was going to stop these 5 people. Even if Zhao Yuan could no longer be saved, he had to at least preserve some hope for the underworld nation. Otherwise, they would be suppressed by the Blue Star Nation for tens of thousands of years. "Let's go," Ling Han said to the Blue Star Princess. Are you going to waste these corpses?" The Blue Star Princess pointed at the 4 sect masters that Ling Han had killed. Ling Han was stunned for a moment. "I didn't expect you to have such extreme tastes. They are humanoid monsters, and I can't bring myself to eat them, although these giant crabs and sea cucumbers looked very tempting. Cooking a seafood soup should be very delicious, right?" The Blue Star Princess rolled her eyes at him. No. The sect master has a fruit of cultivation in his body, and the fruit of cultivation contains celestial qi, don't you know? "That's right." Ling Han faltered upon hearing this. Celestial qi wasn't something that only existed in natural treasures. Sect masters also had celestial qi. He could not waste it. If these 4 members of the sea race were human, then even if he knew that there was celestial qi in their bodies that could be extracted, Ling Han probably wouldn't be able to do it. However, it didn't matter if they were from another race. He would just treat it as killing fish and crabs. In any case, he wouldn't eat them. "Hurry up. If we don't take away the fruits of cultivation as soon as possible, they will be assimilated by the heaven and earth," the Blue Star Princess warned. Ling Han first sliced open the crabman and obtained a bright object in his head. It was only the size of his pinky, but contained astonishing power. The fruit of cultivation. As the light surged, the energy was also rapidly dissipating, returning to the heaven and earth. Ling Han hurriedly channeled the Imperial Scroll and absorbed all the energy in the fruit of cultivation. However, he couldn't absorb most of it, and in the case of the celestial qi, he could only extract a sliver. He did the same with the remaining 3 generals of the sea race. He obtained 4 wisps of celestial qi, which was pitifully little. It's too impure. Can't compare to the black heavenly Tao lotus at all. I would have to refine about 100 fruits of cultivation of sect masters to match the quantity approximately, and in terms of quality, the gap is even greater. Fortunately, I'm only upgrading my dimensions now, so I don't need any high-quality celestial qi. In the future, when I advance into the minor advanced tier, this method is not advisable. Ling Han pondered for a moment before nodding at the Blue Star Princess and saying, "Let's go back to the palace." They continued onwards, but they had not walked too far when they encountered another person. The outsiders that had entered this place also wanted to find the princess and collect the bounty. The Blue Star Princess. This was a small team of 7. When they saw the Blue Star Princess, They all looked pleasantly surprised. Although they had never seen the Blue Star Princess before, one of them was a human outsider, while the other was a mermaid. Even an idiot would be able to guess, right? At this moment, Ling Han couldn't help but complain again. No wonder the royal family didn't even attach a portrait of the princess, even though they were clearly offering a bounty to find her. As it turned out, they weren't sincerely searching for her at all. Now that he thought about it, it was an obvious loophole. The 7 of them looked at Ling Han again, and couldn't help but grit their teeth. At present, Ling Han's might was already deeply ingrained in the hearts of the people. So who did not know? After the 7 of them weighed the pros and cons, they all shook their heads, and took the initiative to retreat. They were no match for Ling Han. If they tried to be brave and make a move, they would only be asking for trouble. Ling Han didn't make a move either. He was in a rush to send the Blue Star Princess back to collect the bounty. The 2 of them continued onwards, but enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. Not long after, they encountered Guan Xinghan. Run! Ling Han grabbed the Blue Star Princess, and suddenly sped up with Phoenix Wing's divine flight. Everything could be discussed after he advanced into the minor advanced tier. After circling around the coral forest for a while, Ling Han finally charged out with the Blue Star Princess in tow. Not far away, the blue screen of light could already be clearly seen. "Let's go there," Ling Han said. Since Sha Tongyu and Sha Yuanxing were both here, he only had to bring the Blue Star Princess there. What need was there for him to waste his energy to go to the palace? The Blue Star Princess was also very curious about the progress of the battle, and hurriedly nodded. The area covered by this light screen was very large. After circling around for a while, Ling Han finally saw the ongoing great battle inside. Zhao Yuan, who had once been arrogant and haughty, was now riddled with wounds. Not only had he lost an arm, but his body was also riddled with wounds, all of which had pierced through his body. He was close to his end. Zhao Yuan kept trying to break out of the siege, but the blue light screen blocked him. Though cracks appeared on the light screen with each punch, and it could be broken with a few more punches, how could Sha Tongyu and his brother possibly give him the chance to attack the light screen calmly? Under the terrifying attack, Zhao Yuan had no choice but to parry. Once Zhao Yuan returned to the battle zone, the light screen would automatically mend itself under the effects of the formation, which meant that everything had gone back to square one. Thus, Zhao Yuan was a trapped beast, and death for him was only a matter of time. And if it was not for the fact that Sha Tongyu and his brother did not want to pay too high a price, they would have long since killed Zhao Yuan. Ling Han withdrew his gaze and turned to look elsewhere. Not far away, Zhao Dilei and the other elites of the underworld nation were also surrounded. The elites of the Blue Star Nation were all mobilized, and even Sea Alligator Zhang was among them. 16 sect masters versus 6. The conclusion was already very clear. Ling Han chuckled, and walked forwards with the Blue Star Princess in tow. "Everyone, I've rescued Her Highness," he said as he walked. "Since everyone is here, I'll leave her here." Seeing Ling Han and the Blue Star Princess walk over, Zhao Dilei and the others all looked furious. How could they not understand by now? This was the trap that the Blue Star Nation had dug for them, and the most important chess piece was the Blue Star Princess. It could be said that without the disappearance of the Blue Star Princess, there wouldn't have been so many elites from the Underworld Nation, giving the Blue Star Nation a chance to get rid of them all in one go. It was too late for regrets. "Bitch, you're going to die a horrible death," Zhao Dilei said through gritted teeth. "How dare you?" The generals of the Blue Star Nation all rebuked. This was their future queen. At first, they had been facing off against each other, but because of these words, they immediately began fighting again. Ling Han also charged into the battle. Though the celestial qi contained in the kind of fruit of cultivation of a sect master was limited, and was not pure, celestial qi was too hard to find. Having it was better than having none. "Die!" Zhao Dilei roared as he glared at Ling Han. He didn't care about anything else, and he simply unleashed his full power at Ling Han. "You're dreaming." Ling Han unleashed a cold punch. Wrapped in destructive energy, he instantly suppressed Zhao Dilei to the point of being unable to fight back. Without the help of a spirit tool, How could Zhao Delii possibly be a match for Ling Han? Under Ling Han's fists, he retreated continuously. Among the generals of the Blue Star Nation, aside from Sea Alligator Zhang, the others had not witnessed Ling Han's battle prowess. At first, they were still puzzled. A mere spirit transformation tier cultivator actually dared to barge into a battle at sect master level. Just how tired of living was he? But only now did they know that this human was actually heaven-defyingly strong. Wang! Ling Han selectively blasted out murderous aura attacks, instantly causing the generals of the underworld nation to cry out in pain. Even that 7 stars Sharkman showed an expression of pain, unable to resist. Although the generals of the Blue Star Nation were confused and baffled, they were experienced in the battlefield, so how could they possibly miss such a good opportunity? Naturally, they took advantage of the opening to make a move. 16 against 6. One side was already on the upper hand. What more with Ling Han's full power help? Pong, pong, pong. With this round of attacks, they immediately killed one of Zhao Delii and his group, while another 2 were severely injured, practically losing their battle prowess. The moment Ling Han made his move, the outcome of the battle was instantly decided. Although Zhao Delii and the others would definitely be destroyed in the end, their stubborn resistance would definitely cause a certain amount of damage to the generals of the Blue Star Nation. Now, with the addition of Ling Han, they could eliminate the enemy without any damage. This effect was shocking, wasn't it? Zhao Delii released a furious roar of despair, but it was useless. Under the effects of the murderous aura, Ling Han didn't need to make a move at all. Sea Alligator Zhang and the others attacked with all their might, and very soon Zhao Delii and the others were all killed. Ling Han moved very quickly, and took away the fruits of cultivation of these elites of the sea race one by one. Sea Alligator Zhang and the others gritted their teeth. This human was really not reserved at all. However, with Ling Han's existence, they had indeed killed their opponents without paying any price. This was also the reward that Ling Han deserved. Ah! At this moment, Zhao Yuan was finally killed as well. A Venerate tier elite died in battle, and a powerful shockwave spread out, traveling far and wide. Zhao Ming will soon find out about Zhao Yuan's death. With his personality, he will definitely launch a wave of attacks, Sha Yuanxing said. Sha Tongyu replied with a nod. However, he's only one person after all. Moreover, he's also missing many generals, so we can definitely block him. Congratulations, Your Majesty! Sea Alligator Zhang and the other generals all half-knelt, their faces filled with joy. As it turned out, the king and his brother had not fallen out with each other. This was all a trap. Now, the Blue Star Nation no longer had to worry about being bullied by the Underworld Nation. Sha Tongyu raised his hand, indicating for everyone to rise, while his eyes turned towards Ling Han. Even when they had been battling fiercely just now, he still had the spare energy to divide a portion of his attention to Ling Han. This was truly a terrifying human. He was clearly only in the spirit transformation tier, yet possessed battle prowess on the level of sect master. In fact, he even had some mysterious means that could affect a large number of sect masters. Very good, you saved the princess, he said. With a wave of his hand, a bead instantly shot towards Ling Han. Extreme Cold Pearl. Ling Han stretched out a hand to catch it, and said with a smile, "Many thanks, Lord Monarch. Then I shall take my leave." He had no interest in participating in the battle between the members of the sea race. For him, the most important thing was to increase his cultivation level so that he could advance into the ranks of sect masters. Not staying. Seeing Ling Han leave, Sha Yuanxing said with a smile, "Though this human is only a spirit transformation tier, he has the ability to influence the outcome of a battle between sect masters. If we can absorb him into our ranks, when we resist the counterattack of the Underworld Nation, our casualties would be even smaller. This is a matter of the sea race, after all. Moreover, that human is filled with pride, so he may not listen to us," Sha Tongyu said. "That's good too. As long as he doesn't help the Underworld Nation, victory is still in our grasp." "True." Sha Yuanxing nodded. Now that the Underworld Nation was short of a Venerate tier, 10 sect masters, and the high-end battle prowess of their ranks was directly halved. If the Blue Star Nation still couldn't deal with this, then they really didn't have the right to exist. Let's go back. We need to make some preparations to face Jiao Ming's counterattack, Sha Tongyu said. You haven't returned home for many years. Haha, all right, Sha Yuanxing nodded. The two elites walked side by side. The Blue Star Princess naturally had the protection of the generals, so there was no need to worry that they would really encounter bandits. Ling Han didn't care about the revenge from the underworld nation. He did not return to the main city of the Blue Star Nation. Instead, he found a coral bush nearby, and after hiding inside, began to refine the extreme cold pearl. As the Imperial Scroll channeled, endless energy surged over, as well as a sliver of celestial qi. Previously, though Ling Han had extracted the celestial qi of the 6 sect masters, they were all negligible. They had indeed improved the dimensions in his body slightly, but they were still far from saturating the dimensions. And now, there was also celestial qi nurturing and increasing the strength of the dimensions inside his body. Invigorating. This feeling was really comfortable. It was like he was soaking in a hot spring, and every single pore on his body had opened up. And what made Ling Han even happier was the fact that under the nourishment of this sliver of celestial qi, the dimensions in his body were also gradually becoming saturated. It was finally about to be completed. Sect Master level was really close at hand. Ling Han hurriedly suppressed his excitement and continued to absorb celestial qi. 2 days later, the celestial qi was completely absorbed, and Ling Han smiled. Success. After so many days of battle, my accumulation is already enough. He had long since reached the peak stage of the spirit transformation tier. The only thing missing was that the dimensions in his body weren't perfect enough, so he no longer needed to accumulate comprehension of this cultivation level. Furthermore, the opponents he was fighting now were all at the level of Sect Master, so the experience he had accumulated was enough. Begin breaking through to minor advanced tier. Ling Han sat in a cross-legged position. He released the hold on his cultivation level and allowed it to soar madly. Regulations of heaven and earth appeared, one after another. Ling Han actually saw a higher level dimension. The energy of heaven and earth had dimensions, and the level of energy that could be absorbed and converted into mystical power was the lowest. It was parallel to this world, and was in the same dimension. And higher level energy was in a higher dimension. This could not be touched, and could only be sensed through divine sense. Why did one need spirit diagrams? The spirit diagram was to sense the path corresponding to the higher level energy of the dimension. Without this path, the divine sense would not be able to touch this kind of dimension. Ling Han could see higher level dimensions now because he was in the process of breaking through. After he completely broke through, it would be impossible for him to enter into this state again. And the so-called spirit diagram, was it that when predecessors had broken through to the level of Sect Master and Venerate tier, they had glimpsed high-dimensional energy, and subsequently deduced it in reverse, and thus grasped the corresponding high-level energy. Ling Han discovered that as he was currently breaking through to the minor advanced tier, he could only see 6 levels of high-level energy. There was no 7, 8, or 9-star high-level energy, and if it was destructive energy, there was even less need to mention it. Every kind of high-level energy was in the corresponding high-level dimension, and they were clearly separated. However, there were also some energy that were exceptions. They were extremely unstable. At one moment they would be in this dimension, and at another they would be in that dimension, changing indefinitely. Celestial Qi. Ling Han immediately understood why celestial qi could be used to nurture the fruit of cultivation, but other high-level energy couldn't. Because this kind of energy was extremely unstable and did not have a fixed dimension, when it entered into a normal dimension and could be captured, it would naturally be absorbed just like ordinary energy. However, celestial qi itself belonged to a higher level, so it was naturally awesome. The first step to breaking through to minor advanced tier and forming the fruit of cultivation. The fruit of cultivation was the understanding of martial arts, and the grasp of the essence of heaven and earth. After forming the fruit of cultivation, the speed of channeling regulations would be 10 times or even 100 times faster than spirit transformation tier. Why was Sect Master able to suppress Spirit Transformation tier? A Sect Master was able to summon regulations with a single move and turn them into an attack. His speed was 10 to 100 times faster than a Spirit Transformation tier, so this naturally was a one-sided suppression. Of course, a Sect Master was also completely superior to Spirit Transformation tier in terms of power. Ling Han had already walked his own path. Thus, he only needed to bury this knowledge and turn it into a tree of Tao, then nourish it with celestial qi, and produce the fruit of cultivation. When the fruit of cultivation ripened, it would transform into fourth extreme, and that would be Venerate tier level. In his mind, a small dot of light appeared. This was the seed of the fruit of cultivation. Inside Ling Han's body, an earth-shaking change happened. The formation of this dot of light signified that Ling Han had taken the most crucial step, and had already advanced into minor advanced tier. However, precisely because of this, Ling Han's divine sense could no longer see the energy in the high-dimensional space. It didn't matter. With the spirit diagram, he could extract energy from the high-level dimension, and with the celestial qi, as long as it appeared in this space, he would be able to sense it and capture it. Previously, I was equivalent to a 5-star Sect Master, and now that I have truly advanced into the level of Sect Master, how strong would I be? Ling Han casually raised his hand, and waves of power surged. Regulations materialized in his hand, forming god tools, ferocious beasts, and various other forms. The greatest improvement is still the use of regulations. Power has only increased by 1 star at most, Ling Han murmured. In truth, his power had long since reached the level of Sect Master, and the height of 5 stars at that. Thus, after he had truly broken through to the level of Sect Master, the increase in power was not as great as he had imagined. However, the speed at which he channeled regulations was even faster, far surpassing the level of an ordinary Sect Master. This was the greatest boost to his battle prowess. The higher the cultivation level, the smaller the advantage of power, and the more important the soul is. Drawing on regulations naturally belonged to an ability of divine sense, and it was the same for extracting high-level energy. At this point, the importance of divine sense was further highlighted. Remodel the Primal Chaos Extreme Lightning Tower. Then go and find Guan Xinghan and the others to call them to account. Ling Han began to reconstruct the Primal Chaos Extreme Lightning Tower. He used the Sect Master-level regulations to refine the pseudo-imperial weapon. Endless high-level energy was extracted and transformed into Tao flames. After a whole 10 days, he finally stopped. The Primal Chaos Extreme Lightning Tower was already 6 stars. Moreover, this was forged from origin gold, and by itself it possessed great might. Even if Ling Han had just advanced to the minor advanced tier, the Primal Chaos Extreme Lightning Tower could still be considered the strongest 6-star spirit tool. Let's go! He stood up and returned to the main city of the Blue Star Nation. However, when he arrived, he shockingly discovered that all the outsiders had left. The Blue Star Princess had already been rescued, so what was the point of everyone staying here? On the other side, the Underworld Nation was unwilling to accept this great loss, and launched a great battle, but their high-end battle prowess was severely damaged, causing them to lose this battle, and they had no choice but to retreat back to the main city of the Underworld Nation. At present, this sea belonged to the Blue Star Nation, at least for the next tens of thousands of years, unless a prodigy from the Underworld Nation rose up strongly and turned the situation around single-handedly. Ling Han hurriedly moved and continued onwards. A dozen over days later, he entered into the territory of the Underworld Nation. He kept a very low profile. After all, Zhao Delii ultimately died by his hand. If his father knew that he was passing by, would he let him go so easily? Another 7 days later, he had already left the main city of the Underworld Nation far behind. Now he had nothing to worry about. Ling Han used the Phoenix Wing's divine flight, but this time he shockingly discovered that there were trajectories in space. When he followed these trajectories, his speed instantly spiked tenfold. This was the true Phoenix Wing's divine flight. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face. After advancing into minor advanced tier, everything was different. Why was it that minor advanced tiers could be called great elites while spirit transformation tiers couldn't? Taking this step, the true qualitative change was not power, but rather the grasp of the regulations of heaven and earth. Ling Han's figure continued to speed up. In fact, even his physical body was faintly aching. Ling Han didn't dare to speed up any further. After reaching this kind of high speed, the regulations transformed into blades that slashed at his body. If he was any faster, his body would be forcefully sliced into pieces. This surprised him. Even with his physique, he couldn't withstand running at full speed. No wonder it was said that Phoenix Wing's divine flight was not only a movement technique, but also an offensive technique. Invigorating, Ling Han thought internally. In future, he was completely capable of capturing someone, and just like that, he would be able to run as fast as lightning, and who knew how many people would be able to hold up against that. 3 days later, he exited the sea, and there was a plain ahead of him. After walking for another 2 days, he could see a massive waterfall from afar, crashing down from the skies. Even at such a far distance, he seemed to be able to hear the loud splashes of waves. After seeing the waterfall and then truly arriving at the foot of the waterfall, Ling Han still spent a day's time, which showed how colossal this waterfall was. Ling Han surveyed the surroundings. The waterfall was cascading down, forming a wide river, and there were many people standing at the banks of the river at the foot of the waterfall. They were all outsiders who had entered this time. However, Ling Han did not see such golden generations like Guan Xinghan or Lu Xiun. Nor was there that crazy woman Feng Miaoling. Even the silver generations and ordinary imperial sons were missing. Someone was currently charging against the waterfall, all the way upwards, but in their rush, they had lost their momentum and were washed down by the waterfall. Then they were washed far away by the rapid flow of the river, and only then did they manage to climb out of the river and onto the bank. Ling Han walked over and asked the others about the situation. Seeing that it was Ling Han, the person who was questioned immediately shivered and explained the situation in full detail. As it turned out, if one wanted to go to the next stage, they would have to go against the flow of the waterfall. That was the only path there. Should he directly fly into the sky and then take a shortcut? No, some people did indeed want to take a shortcut, but in the end, they were killed by the terrifying regulations. This was the imperial path, and only those with the strongest abilities, talent, and determination could pass through. Otherwise, wouldn't the imperial path be undeserving of its name? Thus, after arriving here, the majority of Dao child cultivators were also blocked, unable to advance any further. Those who were lucky naturally obtained great fortune, and those who were unlucky that was all they could do. Ling Han is here. Instantly, whispers spread out. Everyone looked over, focusing their gazes on Ling Han. If it's Ling Han, there shouldn't be any problem, right? There's definitely no problem. The impact of this waterfall varies from person to person. The higher one's cultivation level, the greater the force they'll sustain. I really want to know. He's clearly in the spirit transformation tier, but why is his battle prowess so terrifying? If you know, then wouldn't you be able to become a second Ling Han? Who knows how many Imperial clan elites wanted to capture him and snatch his secret? But what happened? Do you know how many Imperial sons this guy killed? Everyone was envious. It was clear that Ling Han had only come from the Holy Land, but why was he 100 times or 1,000 times more outstanding than them? Ling Han clasped his hands behind his back and looked at the waterfall. Just as he was about to leap in, he paused slightly. He dismissed the idea of charging into the waterfall, and instead continued to size up this waterfall. Shwa! Right at this moment, a flash of sword light suddenly appeared out of thin air, slashing towards Ling Han's neck. The regulations condensed and entwined around the blade of the sword, endlessly increasing the destructive power of the strike. Strange shadow steps, assassin from the Battle God Palace. The attacker was shockingly a sect master, and an 8-star sect master at that. If Ling Han was still a 10th change, then if he did not react in advance, then even if he possessed a supreme movement technique like Phoenix Wing's divine flight, he would still be beheaded by this strike and would not be able to dodge at all. But now Ling Han stretched out a hand and grabbed out. The blade of the sword was grasped in his hand. Why do you guys always like to deliver yourselves to be killed when my cultivation level increases? Ling Han shook his head. At present, he was a one-star sect master, and if it was battle prowess, even he himself did not know how strong he had become. The sect master-level assassin faltered upon hearing this. He hadn't expected Ling Han's reaction to be so quick. Moreover, Ling Han's power was also so great that he could even block the sneak attack. Minor Advanced Tier Elite. The assassin was astonished. He hadn't imagined that Ling Han would actually break through at such a critical moment. Realization instantly dawned on him. No wonder Ling Han had come so late. Previously, he must have hidden somewhere to break through. Damn it! He abandoned his sword without hesitation, turned around and fled. As a qualified assassin, he had always believed in leaving after a single strike, and definitely did not want to linger in battle. Can you leave? Ling Han threw a punch. Boom! Regulations shot out casually, turning into a rope that bound the assassin. There was a flash of cold light, and the assassin drew another sword, slashing out at the rope of regulations. Pong! The sword struck down, and the rope of regulations actually did not break. The assassin was astonished. Although the sword in his hand wasn't a spirit tool, it was forged from 6-star materials. After he activated it, it was powerful enough to unleash the might of a 9-star sect master. Yet it was still unable to slice through Ling Han's regulations. This young man's rate of growth was really too fast. It had only been 100 years, and he had already advanced into sect master tier, which was comparable to the golden generation. And in terms of battle prowess of the same tier, even the golden generation could only stare in dumbfounded shock. He had not entered into the imperial path deliberately to kill Ling Han. Instead, his main purpose was to contend for the great opportunity, but since he had seen Ling Han, there was naturally no reason for him not to make a move. However, the result made him feel great regret. Ling Han smiled faintly and casually waved his fists. However, it was as if the heaven and earth were responding to him. The regulations bloomed like flowers. The assassin was astounded. How was the strength of a sect master judged? Power was a part of it, but aside from that, there was another more important factor, and that was regulations. Ordinarily speaking, a 1-star sect master could only draw on one type of regulations. If one wanted to draw on 2 types, 3 types, or even more regulations, he would need to accumulate them over a long period of time. Of course, if he took too long to accumulate them, the regulations that had been formed the earliest would dissipate. There was a limit to this, and one could not accumulate regulations forever. Ling Han threw out a punch so quickly. Logically speaking, he should only be able to deliver a 6-star regulations, but what did he see? Regulations were blooming like flowers. How many regulations did this have to be? 915. The assassin knew very well that he could condense 10 regulations in an instant, surpassing the ordinary 8-star sect master, yet he was still unable to compare to Ling Han. This was too freakish. He hurriedly parried with his sword, not daring to be struck by Ling Han at all. Otherwise, with so many regulations unleashed at the same time, even if he did not die, he would be severely injured. However, even though they were both clashes of 6-star regulations, there was no qualitative difference. In that case, those with more numbers would definitely have an advantage. Boom! In the exchange of blows, the regulations of that assassin were completely annihilated, and Ling Han still had 4 left. They turned into 4 divine swords and continued to slash out. The assassin was shocked and hurriedly dodged. How could you possibly be so strong? He paid a small price to dodge this attack, and a wound appeared on his arm. This was too inconceivable. This was merely a 1-star sect master, and he could actually condense 14 streaks of regulations in a single strike. Who would believe this? All around them, everyone was also dumbfounded. Those prodigies who had not broken through to the level of sect master were still fine, but those prodigies that were already on the level of sect master were all gritting their teeth. They knew very well how difficult it was to deliver a punch with 14 flashes of regulations. Sect masters below 5 stars didn't even need to think about it, and for those above 5 stars they would need a little time to accumulate. It definitely couldn't be done in an instant. So what kind of monster was this? Ling Han merely smiled. The reason why he was so freakish was naturally because his divine sense was too perfect and too powerful. In the first place, his divine sense had already surpassed the level of an ordinary sect master, and after crossing to the other side, his divine sense had also reached perfection. Afterwards, it was further purified. Who could compare to the quality of this kind of soul? The stronger and more perfect the divine sense, the faster the speed of sensing and extracting the regulations of heaven and earth would be. Ling Han shook his head and said, "That's right. I'm also curious. How can others live with themselves if I am so powerful?" Fuck, this was showing off. But in truth, Ling Han indeed had the right to do so. A freak like him, was there a second one in this world? Even the golden generation can't compare. Perhaps Yang Yihuan or Myriad Dao can. That's right. There's also these two freaks. Though everyone admitted that they were no match for Ling Han, based on simple jealousy, they racked their brains to think of competitors for Ling Han, refusing to admit that he was invincible. The assassin roared and tried his best to break out of the siege. However, this was all in vain. In terms of power of regulations, he was 8 stars, while Ling Han was only 5 stars. In reality, he was on the upper hand. However, in terms of regulations, Ling Han could unleash 14 regulations with a single strike, while he could only unleash 10. Moreover, Ling Han was overwhelming him. Thus, both of them had their own advantages, and for the moment it was hard to decide the victor. Ling Han entered into a prime state and used the Han fists. Instantly, his battle prowess spiked madly. Previously, when he had battled against a great Emperor AR the same cultivation level, it was clear that their power levels were completely equal, but it was still the great Emperor of the same cultivation level that had emerged victorious, suppressing Ling Han to the point that he did not have any temper. Why? That was simple. Every great Emperor had walked their own path. Thus, so what if their power levels were the same? It was the same now. Ling Han had already begun to walk his own path. Though he had not reached the height of a great emperor, his opponent was still no great emperor. Very soon he had the upper hand. A dead silence fell. A 1-star sect master could crush 8 stars. Heavens, who could believe this? When one had reached the level of minor advanced tier, martial artists could be called great elites, and there was a gulf between a 1-star sect master and a 2-star sect master. Practically no one could fight above their cultivation level. Could not be helped. For those that could become great elites, which one of them was not a prodigy among prodigies? Since both of them were prodigies, why was it that you could battle with a disadvantage in cultivation level? Thus, Ling Han's performance was simply inconceivable. His freakishness was unbelievable. However, reality was reality. Under Ling Han's barrage of punches, the assassin was practically unable to fight back. Seeing that the situation was not good, the assassin began to try breaking out of the siege at all costs. He would rather sustain severe injuries than die. Ling Han smiled and couldn't be bothered to waste any more time. He activated his murderous aura. Wang! Ah! The assassin immediately grabbed his head and screamed. He felt as if his mind was about to explode, and his 7 apertures were all covered with blood. Ling Han caught up to him and attacked aggressively. The assassin barely managed to counterattack, but under the suppression of the murderous aura, he couldn't organize a decent counterattack at all. The wounds on his body increased in number and became heavier. After a few dozen more moves, he was forcefully killed. Everyone looked at Ling Han with reverent gazes. This guy was already capable of killing an 8-star sect master. Then, aside from Lin Xian and a limited few members of the golden generation that had advanced into venerate tier, who else would be able to suppress him? Would this era belong to this young man? Ling Han didn't collect the fruit of cultivation from this assassin. Firstly, the assassin was a human, so it would be too much of a conflict for him to dissect his own kind and use their parts. Secondly, he had already advanced to the level of sect master, so he needed pure, high-quality celestial qi to nourish the fruit of cultivation. He ignored the reactions of the others. Instead, he stood up and entered the waterfall. Boom! A devastating power instantly surged over, with regulations transforming into small swords that slashed at his body, yearning to tear him into pieces. Ling Han activated the starlight screen. As he advanced to the level of Sect Master, the Starlight screen also underwent a qualitative change, fusing with the regulations and further improving its defenses. Regulations against regulations, both sides were 6 stars, and Ling Han was unafraid. This small swords of regulations were continuously and endlessly washing over Ling Han's body. It was as if there were 3 or even 5 Sect Masters taking turns to attack Ling Han. If it was another 1-star Sect Master, he would definitely collapse very quickly. 1 against 3 to 5, how was he supposed to block? However, Ling Han could condense 14 flashes of regulations with a casual strike, so what was this worth against him? Going against the flow, he charged towards the top of the waterfall. After charging up for a while, the impact of the waterfall suddenly increased, and the strength of small swords of regulations also increased accordingly. Ling Han merely smiled, and did not throw a punch. He still used the Starlight screen to block. It was enough. This rendered everyone speechless. It wasn't like they hadn't attempted to go against the flow of the waterfall before. What was the result? Looking at Ling Han again, he hadn't made a move yet. It was too easy for him. When he had charged halfway, the impact increased further, and the small swords formed by 1 streak of regulation had also turned into 3. This was a little terrifying. Under the continuous barrage of attacks, even Ling Han had no choice but to become slightly more alert, brandishing his fists to disperse the attacks. Charge, charge, charge again. 3/4, 4/5, 9/10. Ling Han was already nearing the top of the waterfall. At this moment, the impact had reached the level of a 4-star Sect Master. The small swords of regulations had also formed into 4 streaks. This was enough to make 99% of 1-star Sect Masters despair. However, Ling Han was still at ease, easily reaching the end. There was a black door of light in the center of the waterfall ahead of him. Was this the transference portal that would lead to the next area? Ling Han thought to himself, yet he rushed over without hesitation and entered into the doorway of light. Instantly, a mysterious power took effect, and space changed. When Ling Han took another step, he actually appeared in the desert. He didn't immediately move. Instead, he closed his eyes and sensed this area. He still couldn't sense the ley lines. Ling Han shook his head. This made him unable to use the star steps, but that was all right. He had now grasped the Phoenix Wing's divine flight. This was the strongest movement technique in the world, so wasn't it enough? He walked forwards. Since he was not familiar with this place, he was not bothered either. He simply headed in a specific direction. After walking for 3 days, a castle appeared ahead of him. He walked over, and as his eyes swept over the surroundings, he couldn't help but feel surprised. The people here were all outsiders, but there were more than 1,000 of them. Just how many people had been stuck at the waterfall previously? Yet there were more than 1,000 people here. What did that mean? More people who had taken other rainbow bridges had gathered here. In fact, all those who had taken different rainbow bridges would be gathered here. Ling Han. A cold voice rang out. Lin Xian stepped over. The Venerate Tear aura surged, and standing in front of Ling Han, he was like a lion that was staring at a weak lamb. This kind of comparison of strength was completely one-sided. Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. More Imperial Suns appeared. There were Golden Generation Imperial Suns, Silver Generation Imperial Suns, and Ordinary Imperial Suns. Being able to become the Imperial Sun, if one did not even have the ability to pass through the Imperial Path, that would really be too inferior. Aside from them, there was also Myriad Dao, Origin, and Ding Shu. But He Luo and Yang Yihuan were still absent. With their strength, how could it be that they couldn't even make it here? Of course, that was impossible. Thus, there could only be one reason, and that was the passageway corresponding to the Rainbow Bridge that they had taken had not opened yet. This was very normal. For example, on the 7 islands on the sea, everyone had to work together. It did not mean that anyone with overwhelming battle prowess would definitely be fast. Or perhaps they had entered the Imperial Path many times and gone to some special place. Feng Miaoling was present, but she did not make a move. She merely hugged her sword sheath and looked coldly at those Imperial Suns. Ling Han smiled faintly. What is it? It's been a long time. Have you missed me? You're already at death's door. And you still dare to be so arrogant? Guan Xinghan sneered. Although he was a whole major tier lower than Lin Xian, he was also a golden generation, so he didn't appear weak in front of Lin Xian. Because if he wanted to, he could completely advance into Venerate tier in a short period of time. However, he wanted to be stronger, and that was why he was slowly polishing his cultivation at minor advanced tier. Ling Han glanced at him and said, "The adults speak, so kids should shut up. Don't you know the rules?" Guan Xinghan was instantly seething with anger. His eyes were baleful, and he felt an urge to attack. "Ling Han, you are really a centipede?" Lin Xian said calmly. "You have clearly been blocked from Imperial Path, yet you can still appear in front of me. This is really a shock to me." Seeing that Lin Xian had no intention of immediately making a move, Guan Xingxuan didn't dare to overstep his boundaries. After all, he was a Venerate tier elite, so appropriate respect was still necessary. "Are you saying that I won't die? Or that my vitality is tenacious?" Ling Han chuckled and said, "There are still many things that surprise you." Lin Xian ignored him and continued, "However, you are too stupid. You clearly know that I want to kill you, yet still dare to appear in front of me. This is practically courting death." Ling Han's smile remained unchanged, but thoughts raced through his mind. When it came to battle prowess, even if he had the Saint tool in hand, it was still impossible for him to match the Venerate tier elite. Could not be helped. Limited by his cultivation level, the Saint tool could not unleash its strongest might. So the only option was to run. Even if he couldn't use the star steps, Ling Han was confident that with Phoenix Wing's Divine Flight's extreme speed, allowing him to have the advantage of a major tier even in front of an Imperial Sun, he wouldn't be afraid of a Venerate tier. However, he had just advanced into the ranks of Sect Masters, and was just about to kill everyone in his way, when a Venerate tier appeared. Was someone playing around with him? Which bastard dares to bully Old Sun's brother? At this moment, a voice filled with violence suddenly sounded. Ling Han immediately looked pleasantly surprised, and looked towards the source of the voice. "Brother Monkey!" This voice was none other than Brother Monkey. Everyone also followed Ling Han's gaze, their faces filled with surprise. At this time, there was actually someone who dared to help Ling Han? Didn't he know that Ling Han's opponent was the Golden Generation, and a Venerate tier at that? Moreover, it was not just one even. The people in front of him all stepped aside, and then a monkey with the face of a thunder god appeared. Who else could it be but Brother Monkey? Right now, Brother Monkey was dressed in a suit of golden armor. There was also a crimson cloak wrapped around his back, and he held a black metal staff in his hand. However, there were 9 golden threads on each end of the metal staff. Brother Monkey cocked his head, and the staff in his hand was already raised, pointing directly at Lin Xian. This attitude was too provocative, exuding a monstrous viciousness. Lin Xian also looked over, and couldn't help but raise his eyes in surprise. A Venerate tier elite. This was actually a Venerate tier elite. It wasn't rare for Venerate tier elites to appear. Merely the Fire Cloud Imperial clan had around 20 Venerate tiers, and if one looked all over the world, to say nothing of tens of thousands of Venerate tiers, there would definitely be a few thousand. However, those that could enter the Imperial path were extremely rare. As far as he knew, there was only himself, Imperial Sun Ming, and Imperial Sun Tian. Because there was still a relative age limit for entering into the Imperial path, Venerate tier elites had to be under 5,000 years old. But now, another Venerate tier of the monkey race had actually appeared, which naturally surprised him. "Who are you?" he asked darkly. However, Brother Monkey didn't answer. Instead, he charged over and said, "Take a strike from Old Sun's staff first." Boom, the metal rod crashed down like a mountain. No, a mountain did crash down. Regulations intertwined, indescribably terrifying. That was how domineering he was. He was not going to play around. Lin Xian's expression also changed drastically. He didn't dare to face this attack head-on, instead leaping back in retreat. The staff missed its target and hit the ground. The ground instantly cracked and trembled madly. But what was surprising was that the castle ahead of them was unmoved. However, what was even more shocking was the sturdiness of the ground. A Venerate tier elite's attack actually only cracked the ground and did not shatter or disintegrate it. Next, the cracked earth was actually healing, as if it was filled with vitality, as expected of the Imperial path. How strange. Yet Ling Han's attention was not on this. Instead, he exclaimed in pleasant surprise, "Brother Monkey, you have broken through to Venerate tier." Brother Monkey slung the metal rod over his shoulder. "I have broken through, and rushed to 2 stars at that. Ha ha." Ling Han laughed loudly. He was both happy for Brother Monkey, and in his case he had another powerful helper. Seeing the 2 brothers converse, everyone was surprised. Among the Golden Generation, Lin Xian, who could be considered the strongest, was actually forced back by a monkey's staff strike, not daring to face it head-on. Heavens! The Imperial sons all wore solemn expressions, especially the Golden Generation. They were far more familiar with how terrifying Lin Xian was than the others. Even he didn't dare to face him head-on, so just how powerful was his opponent? Lin Xian frowned. It wasn't that Brother Monkey was more freakish than him, but that he was at a disadvantage in terms of cultivation level. Even if he had obtained a considerable number of opportunities in the Imperial path, he was presently only a 1-star Venerate. There was still some time before he could break through. After all, the higher one's cultivation level, the more difficult it would be to break through. He needed to accumulate more experience. A 2-star Venerate tier. He spat out word by word, wariness flickering in his eyes. If the other was just those ordinary Venerate tier elites outside, then he wouldn't care. After all, wouldn't the Golden Generation be able to battle those 1 level above them? However, those who could appear here were definitely prodigies among prodigies, especially those at the Venerate tier. Being able to enter the Imperial path at such a young age. How awesome was that? When Brother Monkey had moved just now, he had seen very clearly that there were 9 7-star regulations entwined around the metal rod. Though he was conceited, he was also very clear that after he advanced into 2 stars, he would only be able to fire out 9 7-star regulations with a single strike. Thus, this monkey's natural talent in cultivation was definitely not inferior to his. Since that was the case, the difference of a single star was like the difference between heaven and earth. Brother Monkey humphed and looked at Lin Xian. "Have you asked Old Sun's staff for permission to kill my brother?" This attitude was too disdainful. Lin Xian was a Golden Generation elite, so how could he tolerate such contempt? But after all, there was an obvious gap in strength between them. He had no choice but to suppress the fury in his heart and ask darkly, "Who are you, sir?" Such a freakish genius, comparable to the Golden Generation. Could it be that he was the same kind of monster as Yang Yihuan? "Your grandpa's son." Brother Monkey placed the staff on his shoulder. Amidst his strange violence, there was also a kind of shamelessness. Lin Xian's eyes bulged, and he almost burst into action. This was too despicable. For better or worse, you are a Venerate tier, so how could you say such shameless words? "You," he pointed at Brother Monkey. "You what you, eat Old Sun's staff again." Brother Monkey had a hot temper, and immediately swung the staff again, completely unreasonable. Hong! 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 The strength of a 2-star Venerate tier elite was unleashed to his heart's content. Brother Monkey was incomparably domineering. Lin Xian couldn't contain his anger any longer, and he summoned the Jade Water Sword replica to parry this attack. However, there was a difference of 1 star between the 2 of them, so he was instantly sent flying. Brother Monkey took advantage of the victory to continue the attack. To dare wound one of Old Sun's brothers. "If I don't beat you into mush, Old Sun will write my name backwards." He was too aggressive. Under the barrage of staff strikes, Lin Xian was completely unable to match him, and could only dodge left and right. Everyone was dumbfounded upon seeing this. This was the Golden Generation. In a situation when their cultivation levels were equal, he actually looked like he was outmatched. Actually, even the Golden Generation couldn't possibly be invincible among their peers, but their reputation was too great, making everyone have the misconception that they were invincible among their peers. Now that the legend had been shattered, everyone was naturally surprised. "Brother Lin, let me give you a hand." Imperial Sun Ming moved, joining the battle. 2 stars versus 1 star, this is too unfair. I'll join too. Imperial Sun Tian also joined the battle. The 3 venerable tier-level Golden Generation elites teamed up to battle Brother Monkey. These 3 people were all 1-star Venerate tier elites, and when they joined forces, their battle prowess had more or less reached 2 stars. Thus, it wasn't long before the battle situation was stabilized. Brother Monkey laughed loudly, his heroic spirit soaring. As he brandished the metal rod, there was a terrifying pressure. It was as if a light strike would shatter even a star. Saint Tool! Imperial Sun Ming exclaimed in astonishment. This was no ordinary metal rod, but had been forged from saintly material. However, it was only SOSO. It was not a saint tool and could not draw on saint-level regulations. However, saintly material was saintly material after all. When it was brandished, it was extraordinarily heavy and had terrifying destructive power. One would be severely injured if he even came into contact with it. Hiss, just how terrifying was this monkey's strength? I know, you're a descendant of the Battle Saint Emperor, Imperial Sun Tian said in a solemn voice. Battle Saint Emperor, a great emperor. Everyone exclaimed in shock. No wonder Brother Monkey was so awesome. As it turned out, he was actually the descendant of a great emperor, and was also the Imperial Sun. What are you blabbering for? Come fight me. Brother Monkey's fighting spirit blazed, and he brandished his staff repeatedly. Regulations and power perfectly fused together, their might shocking the heavens. He suppressed the 3 Golden Generations all by himself, and it was only him who could attack. Lin Xian and the others could only defend. Everyone was speechless as they watched. Could it be that this was the end of the legend of the Golden Generation? Previously, Ling Han had appeared out of nowhere, sniping Imperial Suns all the way, sweeping aside all opposition of the Silver Generation. In the end, there were even 2 Golden Generations that had been defeated by him. Fortunately, the 2 Golden Generations were still at a low cultivation level after all, so he was still unable to shake the foundations of the entire Golden Generation. Now, however, the 3 most powerful members of the Golden Generation were still being suppressed. From today onwards, the legend of the Golden Generation was really going to be exposed. For example, Ling Han, Yang Yihuan, and Brother Monkey all came into being aggressively, completely not inferior to the Golden Generation at all. In fact, they were even slightly superior. Brother Monkey had battled to the point of madness, and was seething with rage. His eyes were about to burst, and his high fighting spirit had solidified, soaring into the heavens. This stunned everyone. Such fighting spirit had never been seen before. No wonder Brother Monkey's ancestor's title was Battle Saint. He was really a battle maniac, unyielding and forceful. Brother Monkey gave him a beating. His style of battle was, I can be injured, but I will definitely defeat you. However, Lin Xian and the others didn't want to fight him head-on. If they were injured here, it would obviously affect their subsequent journey on the imperial path. Thus, once their morale weakened, they were naturally at an even greater disadvantage. Thankfully, they were the Golden Generation after all. With the 3 of them working together, they could still defend completely. In fact, they even had the vague momentum to counterattack. Lin Xian and the others wanted to defend until Brother Monkey's fighting spirit fell, so that Brother Monkey would take the initiative to ask for peace. In that way, they would naturally be proud. However, the problem was that Brother Monkey had inherited the courage of his ancestor. Once he started fighting, he didn't consider the consequences at all. He only had one thought, and that was to determine the victor. This caused Lin Xian and the others to be unable to bear it at all. If they continued to fight like this, the 3 of them would definitely be finished. Of course, Brother Monkey was definitely not much better either. It was very likely that he would die with them. This was something that they could not accept. Who were they? This was the Golden Generation, some of the strongest prodigies among prodigies. They had a high chance of becoming emperor. Would they die with Brother Monkey? Or would they be severely injured from the battle, and lose all hope of becoming emperor? How could this be? Thus, the 3 of them had no choice but to seek peace. However, Brother Monkey didn't care at all. If you guys want to kill old son and my brother, You'll have to suffer Old Sun's fury. The metal rod swept out, and Brother Monkey became even more deranged. Helpless, Lin Xian and the others could only flee. Meanwhile, Brother Monkey gave chase, not allowing the slightest bit of sand to enter his eyes. 3 fled while 1 pursued. In an instant, they had disappeared into the horizon. The moment the 4 Venerate tier elites left, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. This was the only 4 Venerate tier elites. With them here, even the other Golden Generation elites would feel suppressed. Ling Han, Guan Xinghan shouted again. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared at Ling Han. Ling Han glanced at him and asked casually, "What is it? Are you asking for a beating? There's no one protecting you now, and you still dare to be arrogant?" Guan Xinghan said coldly. Xiao Ling Han had already charged out. Phoenix Wings' divine flight unfolded, and wherever the flaming wings flapped, they actually formed multiple small firebirds that pounced towards Guan Xinghan. What? Ling Han actually dared to take the initiative to attack. Everyone was astonished. It should be known that Guan Xinghan was an 8-star sect master. Although he couldn't be considered one of the best in the Golden Generation, he was definitely the stronger ones. Thus, Ling Han's initiative to attack was practically courting death. "Where did you get such courage from?" Guan Xinghan sneered. He was naturally aware of Ling Han's strength. Although he was freakishly heaven-defying, possessing strength capable of matching the 5-star sect master when he was in the spirit transformation tier, he was neither a 5-star sect master nor an ordinary sect master. He stretched out a hand, which turned into a giant palm that grabbed out at Ling Han. It was like it was forged from rock, exuding an ancient aura. There were also streaks of dark veined patterns that interwove to reveal the profound secrets of the heaven and earth. Humph, Ling Han had been able to act arrogantly in front of him previously completely because of Phoenix Wings' divine flight, but in a head-on confrontation. Even 10 Ling Hans added together wouldn't be able to withstand a single strike from him. Die! Pong! The Phoenix Wings swept past, and flames burned the skies. That rock-like hand actually melted rapidly. Fuck! What was going on? What was going on? Everyone was watching dumbly, their eyes blank. What had they seen? Ling Han had actually blocked Guan Xinghan's attack. How was this possible? Who was Guan Xinghan? This was the Golden Generation, and he was already about to reach the end of the minor advanced tier. His abilities could be considered one of the strongest in this tier. But in Ling Han's case, he just entered into sect master level. From the aura that I sensed, he is indeed 1-star sect master without a doubt. Previously, he was only in the spirit transformation tier, so it's normal for him to have just advanced into the level of the sect master tier. The problem is, how can he stand against an Guan Xinghan who is 8 stars? Hiss, everyone inhaled sharply, feeling their scalps go numb. Previously, Brother Monkey had moved aggressively, and it was 1 against 3, suppressing the 3 Venerate tier-level Golden Generation elites. It had already caused everyone to be stunned, causing the invincible legend of the Golden Generation to teeter on the verge of collapse. But now, Ling Han was even more kick-ass, attacking a stronger opponent with himself being weaker, not losing at all. Just how freakish was he? Guan Xinghan also focused his gaze. You actually suddenly advanced to the level of sect master. He knew very well that when Ling Han had been in the spiritual transformation tier, he had already possessed strength that could match the strength of a 5-star sect master. Now that he had advanced into the minor advanced tier, his abilities had naturally increased even further. The problem was, how long had it been? This brat actually broke through? Was the barrier of cultivation level non-existent? Logically speaking, without accumulating enough power for too long, if one was in a rush to break through, it would definitely lead to the shortcoming of having weak battle prowess. However, this was completely unapplicable for Ling Han, who was overwhelmingly strong. He sighed deeply and immediately calmed down. He hadn't lost. Moreover, he was an 8-star sect master. He was no weaker than Ling Han, so what was there to be afraid of? From now onwards, you will be eliminated at all costs, Guan Xinghan said balefully. When your freakishness threatens the Golden Generation's ability to become emperor, you would naturally be eliminated. Unless you had a great emperor-level background, then everyone would be wary and would not dare to make a move. But in Ling Han's case, he only had a single saint backing him up, and in the case of Buddha Doga, his reaction should not be too intense. Ling Han chuckled. Then you all would also have to have such abilities. He attacked again, unleashing the Phoenix Wing's divine flight. Flames soared into the sky. He didn't just use the movement technique alone. He shot out the Han fists. This was his own path based on the various imperial techniques that he had used as reference. It was a fist technique completely suited to himself. Boom! He threw a punch, and heaven and earth reverberated. Regulations materialized, transforming into 14 god tools that slashed at Guan Xinghan. Guan Xinghan humphed, and replied with a palm strike. You are indeed extraordinary. You have just entered the ranks of Sect Master, and can already deliver 14 six-star regulations in a single strike. It can be claimed that there has never been anyone like you before, and there will never be anyone like you in future. However, I am an 8-star Sect Master. As he delivered a palm strike, it turned into a millstone. It was as black as ink, yet was densely covered with silver-veined patterns, and was filled with demonic nature. Pong! The two of them exchanged a blow, and Ling Han's figure instantly slid back. In terms of power, he was still no match for an 8-star Sect Master, what more when it was a Golden Generation. Furthermore, Guan Xinghan could also deliver 15 flashes of regulations with a single strike. In fact, he had one more flash than Ling Han. This naturally was his advantage again. However, Ling Han had walked his own path. Wasn't this the same? Guan Xinghan's figure also swayed, and he retreated more than 10 steps. Teng, teng, teng. With every step he retreated, the ground cracked a bit, and after a dozen steps, a deep ravine appeared on the ground. It was a tie. In a battle of an 8-star Sect Master versus 1-star Sect Master, and it was a Golden Generation at that, yet he could only manage a tie? What kind of freak are you? Everyone looked at Ling Han in shock, completely speechless. Heavens! 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 Guan Xinghan was both speechless and stunned. He had already overestimated Ling Han, yet he was still confident that he could win. This was because Ling Han's power and grasp of regulations were all inferior to his. Thus, there was no reason for him to lose. However, after exchanging blows, he found out that the feeling that Ling Han gave him was just like a young great emperor that had walked out of the primitive doors. It was clear that their cultivation levels were completely the same, yet he was still being suppressed. He had no temper at all. Now, this feeling was exactly the same. No. If Ling Han was also 8 stars, it wouldn't be as simple as suppressing him. Instead, he would be able to easily crush him. How was this possible? He was the Golden Generation. Guan Xinghan's expression was livid. How could it be that the legend of the Golden Generation was really going to be destroyed? Ling Han didn't give him time to be stunned. With a battle cry, he unleashed another punch. He was influenced by Brother Monkey's fighting spirit. Now, he only wanted to fight vigorously and to his heart's content. Who cares about victory or defeat? Who cares about loss or gain? I only ask for a battle. Hong! 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 With the support of such fighting spirit, Ling Han attacked without any reservations, and in truth, he could both disperse a portion of the attack he took, and also had a strong physique as a shield, so he completely had that kind of confidence. On the other hand, Guan Xinghan was also a body arts practitioner, but he hadn't cultivated the true Dragon Imperial Scroll, so his physique at the same cultivation level couldn't possibly compare to Ling Han's. Moreover, he couldn't automatically disperse attacks either. Thus, he would have reservations when he attacked to avoid trading injury for injury with Ling Han. In this way, he naturally gradually fell into a disadvantage. Everyone was once again astounded by this. This was the Golden Generation. He had the advantage of 7 minor levels of cultivation level, yet he was actually outmatched? You've got to be joking. And all the Imperial clan elites looked cold, their killing intent blazing madly. Ling Han was too freakish, far surpassing the strongest generation. So much so that others didn't even have the confidence to match him. This kind of person had to be killed. Otherwise, would there still be any suspense about the battle for the throne? Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. Another golden generation charged out, joining the battle. Boom, the golden generation had long since advanced into sect master level. The lowest cultivation level among them had reached 5 stars. Every single one of them could pose a threat to Ling Han, what more when 20 over of them were attacking together. In fact, Chang Daoyu, Su Qianhai, and the other 9-star sect masters were also among them. Any one of them would be slightly stronger than Ling Han in a one-on-one battle, what more when they were working together. Yet Ling Han was completely unafraid. His fighting spirit was like a tidal wave, and as Phoenix Wings' divine flight unfolded, he shuttled back and forth among the great imperial suns, throwing punches madly. Regulations exploded, and he would fight anyone he saw. On the other hand, the imperial suns were slightly apprehensive. They couldn't hurt their own people, right? Relying on his speed, Ling Han was able to move freely under the combined attacks of the imperial suns. Though he was constantly facing a life-threatening danger, he was always able to resolve it in time. Fuck! This was really invincible. Everyone was watching, all of them gritting their teeth, completely in disbelief. As it turned out, Ling Han was already this powerful. Ding Shu, Origin, and Myriad Dao were also watching, all of them frowning slightly. They too had incredibly strong confidence, but if they asked themselves honestly, if they were in Ling Han's shoes, just how many moves would they be able to sustain from the attacks of so many imperial suns? Without Phoenix Wings' divine flight, the world's top movement technique, they probably wouldn't be able to last 10 moves. They all had ambitions to become emperor, but Ling Han suddenly seemed to be leaving them in the dust, causing them to feel a strong sense of urgency. Now, Ling Han had cast aside all thoughts of victory and defeat, and only wished for a satisfying battle. Invigorating, he continued to laugh loudly, and his Han fists continued to attack. It was as if he wanted to exhaust all of the mystical power in his body. However, even if he was so freakish, even if he still had the Phoenix Wings' divine flight, his opponents were still over 20 golden generations after all. As time passed, he was still wounded. Wounds were left on his arms, lower abdomen, and thighs. Blood was gushing out, but it was as condensed like liquid gem, and did not roll down. And this was still because of his strong physique, as well as the fact that he could disperse a portion of the attack on his own. Otherwise, this would not be something as simple as just a wound appearing. Instead, his arms, legs, or even his waist would have been severed. But so what? Ling Han was completely unconcerned, and merely swung his fists even faster. With a single strike, 14 regulations bloomed at the same time, their destructive power incredibly terrifying. A great many imperial suns were also injured, but they were all 5-star or 6-star sect masters, and their individual battle prowess was already no match for Ling Han. If it was not for the help of others, they might even have been killed by Ling Han. This caused them to be shocked, and their killing intent also blazed even brighter. They definitely could not allow Ling Han to continue growing. Otherwise, they would really be facing the judgment of an apocalypse. Because there was no precedent of the Golden Generation joining forces, they naturally lacked coordination at the beginning, but as the battle continued, this coordination slowly improved. It was just a few 9-star sect masters that were impeding Ling Han, and as for the others, they were accumulating regulations on the sidelines. The moment they attacked, a dozen over regulations bloomed, and even the void was about to be torn apart. After advancing to the level of sect master, he indeed had the ability to tear open the void. The Golden Generation was freakish in the first place, so even the 5-star sect master could unleash 12 flashes of regulations in a single strike. If he condensed them to the extreme, it was completely possible that he could unleash 15 flashes of regulations in a single strike. This was naturally terrifying, and posed a huge threat to Ling Han. In just a short while, the injuries on Ling Han's body increased, and his whole body had turned bright red. Of course, the Imperial Sons had also paid a considerable price, but with so many people sharing the burden, the situation was naturally much better than Ling Han. Hiss! He actually didn't retreat? Everyone bared their teeth, stunned by Ling Han's fighting spirit. To say nothing of a one-on-many battle, even if it was a one-on-one battle, with Ling Han's cultivation level as a one-star sect master, no one would call him a coward if he retreated after a few exchanges with any Golden Generation cultivator. They would only give him a thumbs up. But now, Ling Han had already slapped the Golden Generation's face repeatedly, yet he was still embroiled in battle? It was impossible for him to win, so what else was there to prove? Ling Han really didn't want to prove anything. Since he could still fight, he would fight until he was at the end of his line. In any case, once Phoenix Wing's divine flight was used, who would be able to catch up to him? He channeled the 10 cultivation technique and rapidly recovered from his injuries, maintaining his condition at almost all times. Hong! 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 He aggressively counterattacked. This was his style. If you don't trifle with me, I won't trifle with you either, but if you anger me, I'll return the favor tenfold or 100-fold. Die! The Golden Generation was indeed engaged in a fierce battle and had no time to think. Meanwhile, the remaining Silver Generation and the ordinary Imperial Sons all felt their hearts grow colder and colder. As it turned out, they were still so far away from the highest level of battle prowess. Now, their cultivation level was gradually catching up. A great many members of the Silver Generation had advanced into Sect Master level, but they knew that if they joined the battle, they would only be insta-killed by Ling Han. Since when had the Silver Generation become so weak? No, it was not that they were weak, but rather that Ling Han was too strong. Two figures descended from the sky, and when they saw the intense battle that was ongoing, they all looked surprised. Yang Yihuan, He Luo. These were two people who had entered the Imperial path at least 10 times. Their abilities were unfathomable. This brat is too shocking. He Luo looked at Ling Han, surprise flashing across his face. He is indeed amazing. Yang Yihuan nodded, but at the same time he was also confused. Previously, when he had appeared, he had swept aside the Silver Generation, his might unmatched. Only Myriad Dao could match him, but now another guy had actually appeared, which made even him feel apprehensive. He suddenly felt like things had gone out of control. He Luo looked in a direction, and couldn't help but feel surprised. Feng Miaoling. Yang Yihuan also looked over and similarly looked slightly surprised. However, he immediately felt relieved. The two of them had appeared, so what was so strange about Feng Miaoling also appearing? What about the other guys? Had they not arrived yet, or had they still not appeared? There were a few old guys that had even walked through Imperial Path several times more than he had, so it was normal that they still hadn't appeared, as there was no need for them to walk through Imperial Path again. Brother Yang, do you want to play? He Luo pointed at the battle ahead of them. Forget it. Yang Yihuan shook his head. Can't you see that Feng Miaoling is only watching the battle? He Luo smiled and cast another look at Ling Han. His eyes could not conceal a sliver of shock, and then he said, "The prodigies of this generation are like a gushing spring. After great repression, a great explosion has occurred. Looks like our fated opportunity would be in this lifetime. Brother, he is no longer suppressing your cultivation level?" Yang Yihuan asked with a smile. Brother Yang, isn't that what you think as well? He Luo also smiled. The two of them laughed loudly. Actually, they had long since cultivated to the Venerate tier, but every time they cultivated to this cultivation level, they would sever their cultivation level and start from the beginning again and again. Every time they recultivated, their battle prowess would become slightly stronger. To them, it was too easy to return to Venerate tier level. They had already experienced this many times. Wang, a terrifying aura assaulted them, and the two of them were startled and simultaneously looked behind them. A figure streaked across the skies and instantly appeared above the battle. Bunch of weaklings. You can only bully old son and my brother if you join forces. Brother Monkey appeared, and with a cold humph, 2 streaks of white gas shot out from his nostrils. Boom, the white gas shot down, instantly causing a huge explosion. Boom! The Golden Generation elites were all thrown off their feet, drenched in blood. So what if they were the Golden Generation? With a gap of a major tier, they would only be insta-killed by Brother Monkey. And this was still because Brother Monkey had not delivered a fatal strike. Otherwise, with a single thought from him, even a sect master would only die. Of course, the Imperial Sons all had substitution seals. They would have to be killed a few more times to use up all their substitution seals. This was not because Brother Monkey was apprehensive, but rather because he wanted to leave these people for Ling Han to deal with. Scram! Brother Monkey shouted lightly. His fiery golden eyes were domineering and filled with killing intent. These golden generations didn't even dare to fart. This was a venerate tier, and he could smack them to death with a single strike. How could they be qualified to speak tough? Brother Monkey, where are those 3 people? Ling Han also stopped, not even casting a look at Guan Xinghan and the others. This caused the golden generation elites to want to vomit blood. The feeling of being ignored was even more humiliating than being scolded harshly. They ran away, Brother Monkey said very easily. Ling Han nodded, and his fighting spirit subsided. He slung an arm around Brother Monkey's shoulder. Brother Monkey, there's been no news of you for so long. I went to a place. An old son almost died inside. Ling Han told Brother Monkey about his experiences during this time. Brother Monkey went to a mystery realm to break through to the venerate tier. Thus, he didn't connect to the galaxy network again. When he came out, Ling Han basically didn't use the galaxy network anymore, and it just so happened that the Imperial path opened, so Brother Monkey directly set foot on the Imperial path. As they conversed, more and more people gradually arrived. Ling Han looked around, yet he didn't discover the Empress, the large black dog, and the others. Could it be that they were still blocked outside? Ling Han's expression was slightly dark. These Imperial clan elites were truly shameless. It was one thing for them to block him, but they were even stopping the large black dog, the Empress, and the others. Humph, so what if you guys do this? In the end, the Imperial throne would have nothing to do with the so-called Golden Generation. Ling Han's killing intent soared. By the looks of it, he would have to kill a few more Imperial sons. The doors are open, someone said, and the doors of the ancient castle ahead of them were actually slowly opening. By the looks of it, all the corresponding passageways of the rainbow bridges had already been opened. Thus, the next section of the path had also been opened. In an instant, everyone squeezed in through the gap in the door that had been opened. Those that had appeared here now were all prodigies among prodigies. They had experienced multiple eliminations, so every single one of them were extremely strong competitors. They had to make the most of their time and could not fall behind others. Brother Monkey, let's go too, Ling Han said to Brother Monkey. All right, Brother Monkey nodded. Then let us brothers turn this place upside down. Ha ha! Ling Han was also filled with heroic spirit. The 2 brothers walked towards the main doors of the ancient castle together. At this time, Ding Shu also walked over. Beside him was Myriad Dao, Origin, and Feng Miaoling. Do you still want to spar? Ling Han looked towards Ding Shu. He had made an agreement with Ding Shu. Whoever could break through their limits at a certain cultivation level, and the other could not, or whoever could win in a battle of equal cultivation levels, would be able to take the position of Big Brother. At present, they were both at the level of Sect Master, so he did not know whether Ding Shu would challenge him or not. Ding Shu was extremely depressed. After he had advanced to the level of Sect Master, he had indeed wanted to have a battle with Ling Han, but when he had seen the great battle between Ling Han and the Golden Generation, he knew that he had no chance. The gap was a little wide. When I break through the limits of the minor advanced tier, I'll battle you again, he said dejectedly. And Ling Han raised a brow. Big brother, Ding Shu said through gritted teeth. This was too despicable. In the Genesis world, he was also an absolute overlord, and no one could compete with him. Yet now, he actually had to address Ling Han as Big Brother, which made him feel extremely displeased. That was because the 2 of them had the same starting point, and had both originated from the Genesis world. Why was he inferior to Ling Han? Origin and Myriad Dao had already stepped onto minor advanced tier. However, these 2 people weren't familiar with each other. It was just that they had been famous on the Galaxy Network before, and had risen up at almost the same time, which was why they were listed together. They entered into the ancient castle, and saw that this place was filled with great trees that soared into the skies. Vegetation covered the ground, densely packed together, yet not a single building could be seen. "Brother Ling, I'll take my leave first." Origin clasped his hands and said to Ling Han. "All right." Ling Han nodded. With everyone together, how were they supposed to split the treasures? It was best to separate to avoid conflict. The others did the same. Even Ding Shu took his leave. They were all confident and were completely unafraid of encountering danger. Meanwhile, Ling Han and Brother Monkey walked forwards. They passed through the forest and stepped on the grass. The spiritual qi here was dense, and the vegetation was growing madly. It was lush and verdant. Although Brother Monkey had an impulsive personality and wouldn't waste time on words if he could fight, he was very patient at this moment. He jumped up and down along the way and didn't clear a path with his staff. "There's celestial medicine," Brother Monkey suddenly exclaimed, raising his nose. Brother Monkey's nose was also like a dog's? Ling Han did not say anything about this and merely followed Brother Monkey. Very soon they discovered a celestial medicine. Unfortunately, this celestial medicine was only 5 stars and did not have much effect on Ling Han and Brother Monkey. It was fine. Couldn't he still give this to the Empress and the others? Sha, sha, sha. The sound of rustling leaves rang out, and they could see that someone had also come over. However, when he saw Brother Monkey and Ling Han, his expression immediately became serious. Hurriedly, he clasped his hands and slowly retreated. Ling Han picked up the celestial medicine, and Brother Monkey did not even cast a second look at it. Naturally, he did not take a 5-star celestial medicine to heart. The two of them continued onwards. "Brother Monkey, after the Imperial Path is over, should we return to Celestial Sea Planet to take a look?" Ling Han asked. "Sure." Brother Monkey nodded. "It's been a long time since I last saw Qin Fengyan. At that time, he was always following behind Old Sunday." Ling Han couldn't help but chuckle. When Qin Fengyan saw that he had advanced to the level of Sect Master, what kind of expression would he have? It would have been fine if that old nephew had advanced into Sect Master level, but if he was still in Spirit Transformation tier, he would probably die of embarrassment. Haha, he was actually slightly expectant. Ling Han thought mischievously. The two brothers continued to advance. There were indeed a considerable number of opportunities in this ancient castle, but they were mostly targeted at those below the level of Sect Master. Perhaps it was because they were more unlucky, so they did not manage to find them. They didn't deliberately search for it. After walking for a while, a corner of the building vaguely appeared ahead of them. The two of them exchanged a look, and both sped up. It wasn't long before a building appeared before them. This was a palace, and in terms of location, it should just happen to be in the center of this ancient castle. They arrived at the entrance of the palace. The doors were already open, but they could only see complete darkness. As for anything else, they could not see anything else. "Let's go." Brother Monkey was fearless and took the lead. Ling Han smiled and followed closely behind, walking alongside Brother Monkey. The moment he entered, darkness instantly enveloped him. He couldn't see anything at all, and it was as if he had suddenly become blind. No, not only sight but also hearing. In fact, even his divine sense had been cut off. Ling Han had clearly entered with Brother Monkey, yet at this moment, he couldn't sense Brother Monkey's presence at all. He suddenly turned around, yet he couldn't see the door at all. Transferred? He turned around and walked forward. 2 steps later, he appeared outside the palace and came out. The world was clear, and sight, hearing, and divine sense all returned. In just a short while, Brother Monkey also strode out. "Interesting. The 6 senses are sealed in here," Brother Monkey said. Ling Han nodded and smiled at Brother Monkey. Again, "All right." The two of them entered into the palace once more, and instantly, the feeling of relaxation disappeared again. However, neither of them retreated this time. Instead, they continued onwards. With his 6 senses sealed, even if Ling Han communicated with his divine sense, he was still unable to contact Brother Monkey. He felt as if he was the only one in this world. No, there were still millions and millions of dimensions in his body. Every dimension was filled with vitality and intelligent life. Countless psychic powers of belief were released, though they were all extremely weak. As the saying went, dripping water penetrates stone. One mustn't underestimate weak power. Ling Han strode forwards, and after about 10 minutes, light suddenly appeared ahead of him. The galaxy shone brilliantly. They were clearly walking in the palace inside the ancient castle, so why was there suddenly a field of dazzling stars? Ling Han was surprised. He was presently standing in the galaxy. There were stars in the distance, and as the starlight shone on him, it was as cool as water. He clearly hadn't channeled any movement technique, nor had he stepped on regulations, so how could he stand in the galaxy? This most likely wasn't a genuine galaxy. Ling Han strode forwards. As expected, the void seemed to have solidified, allowing him to walk easily. However, he had only taken a few steps when a star suddenly exploded with astonishing light. Then he saw a figure appear in front of him. It was made up of starlight and had an indescribable beauty to it. However, this starlit human figure immediately threw a punch at Ling Han. Fight? Come on then. Ling Han let out a battle cry and charged towards the starlight figure, his iron fists also booming loudly. Pong! He exchanged a punch with the starlight person and couldn't help but feel surprised. The starlight person's power was actually only slightly inferior to his, and there were as many as 8 regulations. This was battle prowess that could match the golden generations. However, in front of Ling Han, what was this worth? He did not use his full power, but with a barrage of punches, it was only 10 moves, and the starlight figure was forcefully shattered. He discovered that the star that had previously exploded had shot a ray of light towards him, which directly surged in his mind, nourishing his fruit of cultivation. This was originally a small sapling, but now it had grown slightly. Celestial Chi? However, after a while, the light from the star disappeared. Ling Han looked over and saw that this star was much dimmer than before. Perhaps, after a few more times, it would completely dim. In other words, only those who had entered this space the earliest would have the chance to be nurtured by the starlight. As for those who had entered after that, even if they too had walked all the way here, they would not have such great fortune. Ling Han smiled in satisfaction. He continued to advance, and soon, another star lit up. Then, the figure of starlight reappeared. The strength was more or less the same. Ling Han stepped forward to greet him. With a few punches and kicks, he had dealt with this starlit person. In a battle of equal cultivation levels, who could be a match for him? After destroying this starlit human figure, his Dao fruit tree grew a little. He laughed loudly and pushed forwards. With the continuous nourishment of the celestial chi, his fruit of cultivation also grew at an astonishing speed. As expected of the imperial path, it was a place of great fortune. Originally, Ling Han was still some distance away from the golden generation, especially those like Lin Xian and the others who had already advanced into Venerate tier, but through this kind of fateful encounter, he was completely capable of catching up or even surpassing a portion of the golden generation. Right now, Ling Han was already standing at the forefront of the younger generation. As they battled, the speed at which he disposed of his opponents was too fast. Merely a day later, he had arrived at the end, and saw that a path had appeared ahead of him. He couldn't help but feel regretful. It ended just like that. Though the Dao fruit tree was thriving, it still hadn't produced any fruit of cultivation. It was still some distance away. He tried to retreat, but when he walked again, no starlight figure appeared again. There was nothing else that could be done. He should just continue onwards. He walked out of the passageway and surveyed the surroundings. He saw that there was actually a cemetery ahead of him. Multiple burial mounds towered. Some tombstones were as tall as 3,000 meters, and the burial mounds were like great mountains. Some tombstones had been broken, and it was unknown whether it was because they had been corroded by time or had been broken in battle. Would there be souls or zombies charging out? Ling Han was filled with anticipation as he strode into the cemetery. However, the breeze rustled eerily, but no enemy appeared. All right then. Ling Han was slightly disappointed. At present, he longed for battle because if he battled and killed enemies here, there would be many benefits. He walked past one tomb after another, his eyes sweeping over them, wanting to see who was buried here. However, these tombstones were all the same, with no words on them. Were the people buried here all nameless people? Ling Han suddenly felt an urge to dig up a grave. Was someone really buried here? He forcibly dismissed this kind of impulse. If the ancients had really slumbered here, then how could he bring himself to dig up their graves when there was no enmity between them? How could he allow the ancients to not be able to have peace even after death? The deeper he went into the cemetery, the eerier and darker the environment became. There was also a bone-deep chill. After walking for half a day, the exit of the cemetery appeared ahead of him, or rather the entrance. What surprised Ling Han was that there was actually another thatched cottage here. Couldn't be that there were people living here, right? Ling Han walked over, yet saw the thatched cottage creak open, and an old man in gray robes walk out. Dream of 1,000 years. The gray-robed elder stretched lazily, then turned to look at Ling Han, as if he had just seen him. A hint of surprise appeared on his face. "Young man, what are you doing here?" This old man could not be seen through at all. A saint? But in the case of saints, wouldn't they be unable to enter into the imperial path? Could it be that it was here that he had broken through? All of a sudden, thoughts flashed through Ling Han's mind. However, a smile appeared on his face, and he said, "This junior is just passing by." "Oh," the gray-robed old man nodded. "That's right. This is a cemetery. You are so young, so what have you come here for?" Ling Han was curious, and couldn't help but ask, "Senior, who are the people buried here? Why are there graves but no words?" The gray-robed elder looked into the depths of the cemetery, and said slowly, "What is buried here is not a person, but rather time." Time? Ling Han couldn't understand. How could time be buried? Although there was indeed such a theory, it was only a metaphor. Couldn't be that someone had really built a cemetery, right? Since you've met this old man, we can be considered somewhat fated," the gray-robed old man said with a smile. "Come, young man. This old man will treat you to a drink." "Thank you, senior," Ling Han said with a smile. The gray-robed old man brought Ling Han into the thatched house. The furniture here was really simple. There was only a bed and a stone table, as well as a stone stool. The gray-robed elder had Ling Han sit on the stone stool, while he himself sat on the bed. Then he took out a wine pot and 2 wine cups from who knows where, and placed them on the stone table. Ling Han picked up the wine pot and poured a cup of wine for himself and the gray-robed elder. He looked at the wine that had been poured out. It was extremely murky, and there was not the slightest bit of fragrance of wine from it. "What is it? Are you complaining about the wine?" the gray-robed old man asked with a smile. "It certainly doesn't look like much," Ling Han said honestly. "Ha ha!" The gray-robed old man laughed loudly. He held a wine cup, and a nostalgic look appeared in his eyes. Then he raised it. "One toast to the heavens, one toast to the earth, and one toast to the ages." Then he drained the cup in one gulp. Ling Han hesitated for a moment before also picking up his wine cup and draining it in a single gulp. He suddenly felt a wave of intoxication assault him, and in an instant he felt very dizzy. With his cultivation level and physique, he was completely unable to withstand it. Involuntarily, he couldn't help but lay down on the table, and very soon began snoring. After so many lifetimes, it's time to take a gamble. The gray-robed old man walked out of the thatched cottage, then turned to look at the wine pot on the table. "Brat, you're really lucky. Throughout history, there were less than 10 people who could drink the time wine. I can consider today as forming a good karma." He took a step, and a great golden path spread out, and he instantly disappeared without a trace.